Good evening, all. Welcome to this week's Midweek Geek. I have a very keen panel already here, unlike last week when they all sort of filtered in slowly and drifted away, and yeah, but they were bright and early. In fact, Saxius and Bear were here before I was. So I think I should say hello, Saxius, and hello, Bear first, and then we'll come to Slan afterwards. Because Slan's just joined us.
Hello,
Hello.
hello. All good.
Hi.
And hello, Slam. Hello, Slam. Right. We have 11 people in chat, which has suddenly dropped to 5 as soon as I open my mouth. So I don't know what happened to that. Good evening. Good evening, Alaka. Good evening, Christopher. Good evening. Oh, there's you, Slan. There's Andy as well. And nice to see people. Nice to see people. First thing, we're going to have a little recap on any games we've been playing before we do anything. Anything if you've got a channel, anything you've been doing with your channel, because I know there's a new channel sprung up in the last few days.
Yeah.
We'll go to Saxius first, though. Any games over the weekend?
I only had my my 5e game that I'm doing with Eli or Elfbait, and they are marching out from the Frontiers fort. I have more or less identified that there is a covenant of hags. They have recruited some leveled NPCs to come along with them, and so actually Praxis, and they've recruited leveled NPCs to tag along with them, as it's quite important that they get some form of stability in the region before the fort and everyone can sort of properly grow and get some financial gains. And there's been some big decisions that's been made. They've more or less agreed that they need to explore the wilderness a lot more around the Hags Covenant, see if they can get something, learn from that. So the party did the most brilliant thing, which was divide, and send the ranger and a lone NPC wizard with them to go and explore the Hag Covenant. And the rest of them basically said, like, we're just going to sit and wait. Well, my decision was that as the DM, like, okay, well, you're going to sit and you're going to wait. Well, the NPCs are going to want to know some things, like, you found Curator before. We know that there were worshippers of Dagon. Have you dealt with any of the evil, altars that they left behind? And the players just said and went, no, we haven't. So they went on a little side expedition, found one of the altars, found where they did all the ritualistic sacrifices, and as per instructed by the NPCs, they just, let's just destroy it. They did that, and they realized, wait, there's something beneath this altar. What is that? It looks like a tomb. Let's jump down there. And I reintroduced a monster that I've discovered in 3.5, which is called the Bloody Bones, which is Otto Octavius in skeleton form and tentacles, so that he can just grab you and drag you around. Of course, I use this ability to drag some of the players around towards very deep water, because nothing screams panic more than having to make the players read up on suffocation and drowning rules.
Especially if wearing armor.
Exactly. I don't need to kill you with hit dice. I just need to keep you underneath water for long enough. That's a Khan problem, not a me problem.
I could see Bear grinning when you mentioned that Dr. Octopus reference.
Yeah.
Bear being Bear being a Marvel nerd.
We're all just stereotypes to you, aren't we, John? We're
Yes,
just pigeonholed in your little boxes, put on your shelf. He's the sci-fi guy. He's the superhero guy. Man.
And he's the spreadsheet guy.
Exactly. Gotta have your numbers ready. Hey, that was it. They survived. I need to roll up some magical items and some loot for them. They're happy with that, but I enjoyed the players they filled out all the blanks, because at one point, the NPCs, one of them was a cleric, used turn undead. All the undead began running, and one of the undead was like, well, I'm going to try and push my way through this door to get away from the players. And the players convinced themselves, behind that door is something evil, something bad. Do not let it open that door. and they spent more resources into destroying that specific skeleton to prevent it from opening a rusty door because they were convinced there was something bad behind that door. I love that. Literally, it was just another room. There was nothing behind there, and it was just their imagination going wild because they were convinced that because Oscar is running the game, there is no safety here. There is evil behind it in every. Okay, fine. They have a valid reason.
There's evil behind the DM screen.
Yeah, there is, yes.
I'm worse.
Hello,
I don't
Praxis,
have
and
a
hello,
screen.
Kabuki, who both joined us. Bear, you've been playing things online, haven't you?
Yeah, I've also have a home game that's been going quite well. It's nice to be playing face-to-face again. That's really a good time. But yeah, right now my live streams are 2 Against the Dark Masters on alternate Monday nights, 1 Bastard Sword on alternate Fridays, and currently on alternate Tuesdays, Star Trek Sojourner, which has been really fun. And after Thanksgiving, we're going to be adding an alternate Friday, Star Trek Paradise Station, though the name will change after the first session. I just can't reveal the real name because it would spoil something that's going to happen in the first session. But otherwise, other than that, I do want to say Kabuki Kid has the coolest Hong Kong Cavalier-esque name I have seen in a long time. Please get in touch with Buckaroo Banzai immediately. You're missing your calling in life, sir. But yeah, there you go.
It's a her.
Oh, it's a her. Well, then, madam,
Yeah.
please. Pretty please.
So there you go, Kabuki Kid. You've got yourself a game if you want one, by the looks of things.
No, oh my God. Watch movies that aren't fantasy. That's all I'm going to tell you, John.
I'm just saying. I don't know.
Have you ever seen Buckaroo Banzai? No, you have not. And clearly, you would actually like it because it's gonzo and wacky.
In short doses, then.
Oh my God! I can't say.
Huh? Oh, no, I've had a long day. Oh, there we go. Kabuki Kid does like a bit of Buckaroo Banzai.
Thank you, Kabuki. You're a Blue Blazer regular, and I knew it. All right, that's it. That's all I have to say about that. I'm done. And as for superhero stuff, Heroic is currently in design stage. We just added Tim Bennick, who is the creator of Astonishing Superheroes, who, when he decided he was going to give up publishing Astonishing Superheroes, I got in touch with him, and we're bringing all the best parts of Astonishing Superheroes to Heroic. He's joined the quality on that, and we should have something after Christmas, hopefully, for everyone. There's pre-beta up on Drive-Thru-RPG, but we should have a full beta in the new year.
And Slan, you've just started a channel. Is Slan alive?
Yes, I have. I was planning to do it this summer, but stuff came up in real life, so I had to delay the whole thing. Managed to upload a bunch of videos. Hopefully people like them. And today I cracked the elusive 2 digits for number of subscribers, so I'm pretty chuffed about that.
Who was your first ever subscriber?
And we'll see how it goes.
Who was your first ever subscriber?
As for gaming, last Friday I ran my Gamma World in-person game. The players witnessed the big battle from afar, managed to avoid getting sucked into the big fight, scavenged afterwards the remains, found a clue to what they don't know yet, did some more traveling. We'll see how it goes. They just reached they've been traveling overland for a couple of weeks, and now they just reached a road going, they've been traveling north, they reached a road that goes east-west, so they have to pick what direction they're going to go to and take it from there. We'll see. And the channel's been keeping me busy, and Clericon's coming up this weekend, so I'm prepping for that.
Channel link, please.
Oh, Grumpy Old Slan. I'll put it in the private chat. Okay.
Excellent. I want to go subscribe to immediately.
Yes, go and subscribe to Grumpy Old Slan, long-time supporter of my channel, long-time. We encouraged you to get involved with Discord, and have you regretted it? I'm not sure if Slan can hear me at the moment. Am I coming through loud and clear?
Well, I found it, and I'm officially subscriber number 11. Yay!
Am I not coming through at all?
No, you're coming through. I just missed a word, so.
Oh, right. Sorry. I said, well, who was your first subscriber?
Oh, yeah, well, that was you.
Yes.
Yeah, you were really quick for subscribing there.
I happened to be at home at the time. I was like, "Oh, Slam's got a channel, there you go, click." And do you after we took ages persuading you to come and join us to play on Discord, do you regret it at all? I wonder if I'm
Slan, do
dropping
you
it.
regret
Slan,
coming
buddy.
onto Discord and playing games with us?
Slan, don't make Saxius mad. He's Danish. They go crazy.
Yeah. No, actually, I've had a lot of fun. So
Good. I'm wondering if I'm just lagging a bit for Slan or cutting up a bit. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Hello, Richard. Hello. Oh, General Nuts here as well. Hello, General Nut. Nice to see you about, fellas. And right, yeah, I was supposed to run a game of Call of Cthulhu last night, and maybe Halloween was not the best on a Tuesday night, which worked out as afternoon time in the US, was probably not the best time to try and organize a game. And so we didn't end up playing last night. On Saturday, we played in our second resurrection funnel of OSE, run by Gingerbeard. And it was all of our dead characters had to undergo this quest into this completely crazy Candyland type place. It was a Lamentations, the Flame Princess adventure that he converted. It was bonkers. And we ended up undoing the wish that had caused all the curse on the land. But in turn, it undid everything that brought us to that land, which instead of resurrecting us, sent us back to purgatory. So none of us were resurrected in that resurrection funnel. None of us survived, effectively. Anyway.
Someone somewhere botched their spell for resurrecting someone.
Well, it was the solution would have been to kill the girl that made the wish. I was playing a lawful paladin. There's no way I was going to kill an innocent young girl whose wish had been corrupted.
Oh. Quote a certain organization from Warhammer 40,000: innocence proves nothing.
Okay. But anyhow, so none of us got resurrected. It was a lot of fun anyway. It was just it was just silliness. It was absolute silliness. But that been my only game, which is a shame. We're playing this weekend, OSE on Saturday afternoon and MERP on Saturday evening. So anyone who wants to be there, more than welcome. Right, we have a topic for tonight. We do have a topic. And that is big, bad, evil guys. Again, it's Oscar who has suggested the topic for tonight. He's good at coming up with these sort of discussion topics. I was sat there eating my dinner earlier, wondering if you're playing an evil campaign, instead of a BBEG, would it be a BGGG?
Spell it out for us. Go on.
A big, good guy.
How your empire fell, I'll never know.
These are the silly things that bounce through my head while I'm eating spaghetti bolognese at 6:30 at night.
It certainly will be the antithesis of whatever the bad guys are going to be. So the heroic good champion, or HGC, whatever you want to call them.
So, first thing I'm going to ask is, first thing, big damn heroes. we got some new names here. Damon Vaughan, hello. Dueling Dragon Adventures, hello. Good to see these new names in chat on a Wednesday night. Right, so big bad evil guys.
Yes.
Do campaigns need them?
Well, as a requirement, no. Like, there is a need. Well, basically, there needs to be some form of Well, I like to have an overarching enemy that you build
Yes.
towards, and that's my style. Now, if you're going to be taking a game that you like to keep on throwing up every time I do this, which is keep it the Borderlands. No, there are no big bad evil guys. An overarching enemy. There's more, the players versus the environment and so on. But that's its own thing altogether. But the majority of the current era of D&D players who have grown up, reading books like Aragon, Lord of the Rings, many of these fantasy books where there's this overarching story or overarching enemy that the protagonists are trying to take on. That's a trope. That's classical, not just in fantasy literature, but just in like mythology and any of the stories. And as of such, it's often a good way of marking this is a potential endpoint for a campaign. Work your way up towards this. Or it's a good way to build up towards something that way, if you're looking to at least find some way of having a conclusion for a campaign that isn't pure sandbox.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously it depends on your preferred gaming style. Even a sandbox game, though, can have an enemy that is seeded, a main enemy that is seeded in. But what happens in a sandbox game, it'll go on beyond that enemy. Whereas often in a more story-based game, the idea is,
oh, for God's sake,
to confront that enemy.
Oh my God, General Nut. Yes, even if the GM doesn't create one, the players will create the BBG. Example, the Miller's Wife. That campaign is going to be haunting me for the rest of my life.
For those of us new to the zoo, what is the Miller's Wife?
So the group,
Shadow of the Demon Lord.
The group was playing Shadow of the Demon Lord. They had decided that they were all going to be playing chaotic neutral goblins. And one of the missions that they went on, they had to go and investigate and clear out a mining, basically a mine. On the way there, they met a hideous woman that had butterfly wings and was flying around and trying to kill them. And someone said, that's got to be, the wife of the miller. Yeah, that's someone's...
Because we'd encountered it, the miller had come into it somewhere. We talked about a miller somewhere.
Yes.
But a miller's a type of moth.
Oh, the millers were the millers who ran the mills.
Yeah,
Either way,
I'm getting a double entendre out of it, and it sucks because it's a pun. I hate puns.
Either way, the point is the players inserted this, and it became an ongoing thing about everyone evil was related to the miller, just everyone. Stepsisters, distant
the miller's
aunts,
mother-in-law,
the miller's mother-in-law, which turned out to be a hack. It just kept on building up. Anyway, yes, so there is a great deal of benefits from having an overarching enemy, but it is down to whether or not it is what you want to have out of your game. Is there anything you want to jump in there? Go on, Slan.
Yeah,
what's the question?
Say, one of the things that happens is you might have a given overarching, big bad evil guy controlling everything, and the players come up with their own, and you should just run with it if they really engage with that other idea that they came up with in their paranoia. You shouldn't. If your big bad evil guy is not what they're fearing, don't try to scare them with it. Use what they're fearing.
Go on.
Point of parliamentary procedure. So I'm the guy that's going to always, and I seem to be the contrarian in these old school podcasts because I disagree with the idea of let the players dictate things like that. If your big bad guy isn't scaring the crap out of the players, you've done something wrong with that character. You need to make him scarier. And if they are tweaking on random NPC B or C, well, guess who just became a lieutenant of the big bad evil in the campaign world? So that thing that they fear can still tie into the big bad at that point in time. At least that's what I would do in my thing. And I don't disagree with you guys. I don't buy into that let the players run the universe concept that I see way too much in D&D stuff.
Well, it
I
depends.
think that approach is valid too. It'll depend on what exactly they're tweaking on, and if they've dismissed things out of hand. Of course, it can really come by and bite them as they get back to their home village to find like a pile of ashes because the real big bad guy wasn't being stopped by them.
That's fair.
Yeah, let there be consequences.
There's tons of stuff you can do.
I mean, there's precedent,
but it's
right?
something
While
sometimes
they were off destroying the One Ring,
players are really worried about something. I mean, the players, they don't know it yet, but they like my players in Gamma World just introduced the new.
Slan, you're breaking up.
I
for me.
think his internet is collapsing.
Yeah, slowly like a flan on a cupboard.
In that case,
I have just added a poll for people to engage
I'll
with.
Stay in the chat.
All right.
Okay.
That sucks. That's not fun, man. Slan, I feel bad for you, bro. Oh my God. Best big bad guy. Well-spoken Brit. Well, we don't have one of those. Sadistic Dane. Yes, currently. Big Canadian ex-doorman. Again, put me in a box. Just shove me into any box you can put me in there, John. And hidden Canadian polyglot. Okay. Even Nazis have British accents in Hollywood. You understand? It's just the way of the world. You guys are evil. It's just who you are. I got to vote well-spoken Brit because you guys are just evil by comparison.
Oh.
Hey, Sax, you and I are tied. That's awesome, buddy.
Yes. So yeah, clearly the well-spoken Brit is winning the poll, but Sadistic Dane has just got a couple more votes.
Oh, good for them.
I'll leave that poll open for a little while.
I'm so glad I'm not getting the votes. Thank you, gentlemen. I am a paladin at heart, therefore I could not be a good bad guy.
I'm expecting someone to say, "What's a polyglot?" at some point.
That's no. I have a reputation to maintain. Either case, I think a lot of, at least when I post for this question in regards to having to be big bad evil guys, often I see with the current players that comes in, there's the expectations of there will be an overarching story, which usually revolves around there's going to be some sort of big bad at the end of the entire thing. Even from the sandbox campaigns I've run, I've always basically gone from here's the next big bad guy for the adventure you're going for, or here's the conflict that we are going towards, even if it's not presented overtly to the group. Not all enemies are out there in the open. Sometimes, I mean, hell, I've just had them stumble into areas where they've learned, oh, we're in the forest here. We've just gone exploring, and we've now learned that there's actually a fort of hobgoblins. This is bad because we don't want them to martialize. So now we've got to go and deal with that. Or we've now discovered someone is minting silver. Who can do such a dastardly thing? Now we're seeing the economy being affected by this. We've got to stop or do something about that. These are the sort of moves that I would use a big bad for. And
but of course, a lot of these things could be something to do with a big bad guy, or could it equally be just something completely irrelevant? But the big bad guy could hear about them and move in on them.
Go on, Bear.
Thank you. Well, let's go back to Lord of the Rings, right? Let's go back to the entirety of Middle Earth. You've got Morgoth, big bad. You've got what the hell's the Ungoliant? Serves the big bad, but eventually does its own thing, creates and eventually begets Shelob, right? Sauron, servant of the big bad, but becomes a big bad in his own. Saruman, ass kisser of the big bad, who eventually breaks off on his own and does horrible things. And while the heroes are off destroying the One Ring, that minor bad becomes the big bad in regards to the Shire by scouring it, right?
Absolutely.
But everything's connected in Middle Earth. Everything's always related to the Dark Lord, So it
Yeah,
depends on how much intricacy you want to have in your plot. Do you want to have that level of weave, or do you want it just to be random chaos?
And how much of that chaos, though, can be affected by the actions of the party? They can have a big impact on which of the big bad guys ends up becoming the big bad guy, at least for a time.
Yeah, and from their perspective.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely towards their story, at least. I mean, this is one of the reasons for why, I mean, jokingly, yes, I do have an Excel sheet where I keep track of the different big, bad, evil guys, but I also keep track of the good guys and even the neutral ones, because they do actions as well. The world keeps on moving. The good guys take their actions, the evil guys take their actions, the neutral guys try to sort of do the things to do what they want, what they believe is best. I mean, there's the system from Seen No Mean, Stars Without Number, World Without Number, all of those systems. They've got basically a DM's turn where the DM can then say, like, okay, X amount of days have passed in the world. Now the world takes a spin and actions happens, and then that can have either adventures that the players can get involved in, or they can have, or the players have taken actions that has had consequences to one of the factions, and now that faction has to deal with that.
I mean, when I create a campaign, I rarely have one big bad guy in mind. I'll often start with several potential big bad guys who may or may not have something greater in store for the campaign. It depends on which direction it goes, but it's rarely just one. I'm not a big fan of just the one idea.
Do they then go full Hunger Games and fight it out amongst each other?
It's possible.
And then just have the rest of the world just be caught in the side as these titanic powers clasp against one another. Cities burn, landscapes are uprooted, the fires, breathes down acid, just wonderful things.
They're not always titanic powers at the start, though. That's the thing. They're not. They are potential powers.
Okay, so look, in my Against the Dark Master campaigns in my setting right now, the big bad, the overarching big bad, is essentially the devil. Okay, for lack of a better portmanteau, it's the devil.
Yep.
But right now, at this point in the campaign, all evil is being drawn to one place where they will decide who will be the disciple that will attempt to destroy, take the world in his name in this age, which means they're not just going to show up and, give pretty speeches, and be like, well, I feel I should be the one because, frankly, I have the best hair. No, they're going to have to, prove their power to the forces of evil, and that means they're going to be fighting. So the players are currently having a small window where they get to get their shit in order, get their stuff in gear before the decision is made somewhere else. And then that becomes all of that focused on destroying them. Big difference. Yes. And if they piss away their time with stupidity and nonsense, they'll be woefully unprepared.
I know that. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it's, one of the big reasons of the topic itself is that, well, it's like a few months ago now, because it's been revealed in my second edition campaign that there is a lich in the region of the players. So it's a big reveal. Liches are bad, scary, but the players have realized that the lich is not looking at the players. He has got other things. He's got other major forces that he's dealing with. And a player made a comment of, if we can stay below his radar long enough to get a surprise attack, we might actually stand a chance. But if we do anything too loud, we get his attention, we are boned beyond belief.
Yeah,
and that's basically what made me think of big bad guys. Oftentimes they are very big, larger than life. Look at Sauron, Morgoth. Those characters, they were incredibly dangerous, to the lowly individual. If we look at the Fellowship of the Ring versus the powers that we had at the time, unfathomable in comparison. All they needed to do was just to go below the radar and be able to use subterfuge and effectively the ability of stealth to get that little bit of upper hand tip the scales. But then, how do you then, as a DM, how do you manage that? Especially if you have the players doing their thing. How do you then make sure that there is a balance between the players? Well, of course, there's going to be consequences if the players are going to throw caution to the wind every time. But how do you balance the reaction from a major antagonist versus the actions of a player of the group?
Personally, at the start of a campaign, when the characters are typically fairly weak, then they're going to go under the radar unless they do something particularly stupid, because they are of no real importance unless there is some big mystical prophecy of some sort, which means the big bad guy is thinking, hang on, it's been prophesied that someone will rise in such and such a land and will cause my downfall, and something like that. But so at the beginning, you're only likely to see the effects of the big bad guy's minions more than anything, or encounter the minions, because you're not coming into a direct contact usually with the main bad guy. You're not significant enough. He's got more important things to do.
But hang on. What if you've been dispatched by the Shining Council of Goodness and Truth to gather up these things or perform these certain tasks that are needed to thwart the machinations of the big bad guy? And now, to quote a certain movie, it belongs in a museum. His agents are trying to get the same things you're trying to get. And now you've got to deal with that. You are on the radar. It doesn't matter how low down you go, your very task will put you on the radar to a certain extent. How large a ping you make on that radar is what remains to be seen.
I mean, again, you can look at the movie like Willow. It was quite clear from the very get-go. Oh. No, sorry. No, yeah, but the movie Willow was a good example of, there's a big prophecy. There is very big powers that are looking to locate the child that will, destroy, all evil and bring balance and goodness, and a huge amount of effort and resources were poured into that. Ultimately, with Willow, being the one from an unlikely of place, able to just disappear away from where the evil eyes were looking and think of things and solutions that wasn't expected. Am I just hearing in agreement here?
If you want to really mess with your players, by the way, they're not even the B team. They're the C team. They're being sent on pointless errands to distract the big bad guy by making sure they make lots of noise while they do it, while the A team and the B team are secretly off doing what they got to do, like sneak into Mordor or whatever the case may be. Yep. And your players don't know it until they do. And then you twist the entire campaign by having the A team and the B team get wiped out, and now it's up to the C team to go in and finish the job.
Or the A team, one of the A team or the B team get corrupted in some way.
Sure, that's how that works too. Yeah.
But I think the main difference between the way we're all looking at things, I mean, you're mentioning things like films like Willow. You've already said you like to have a big bad guy, a defined big bad guy, at the end of a story.
Yeah.
My approach tends to be more of, I mean, yes, in my OSE campaign, Krampus is clearly the main bad guy, but there's plenty in my mind in terms of other bad guys popping up that could become a big bad guy, and I haven't got it really determined in terms of any form of story as to what's going to happen when they encounter Krampus, or how Krampus is going to manifest. It's just going to depend on what the players want to do. So I've got no real thoughts as to plotting out a story-based game here. I'm just letting it go.
Well, I agree. Again, like I said, my method is I want there to be a bad guy at the end, but having a selection platter is usually a good start, but there's got to be narrowed down to one, whether that's the players deciding, or if you funnel it so that the players have to deal with like a number of these potential threats, and then if each time the other ones grow in power, and then it becomes progressively so that the next thing that the players have to deal with is now, I don't know, Merrow and Sahugans, coming along the coastline and bringing forth, demonically possessed sharks or what have you. And then they've got to have an underwater or an aquatic campaign where they've got to go and deal with these things. And then they deal with that. And then the next thing that they now learned is like, well, because they put attention towards the sea, they forgot about the sky. And now we've got, I don't know, corrupted Aarakocras and an evil rock that's moved into the area. I'm just throwing out ideas of like how you can build up the concept of what's the next big bad one, so forth.
Well, they weren't kidding when they said evil sits behind your DM screen. Man, demon sharks? That's brutal. I love it.
Why not? Like,
just off the top of my head, demon sharks. Why not? Like sharks aren't bad enough.
Go on.
You'd be most likely to bring those in when they're busy drowning, as you've already mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
while they're making their drown checks.
Listen, the point is like, okay, they're gonna go into the water. I expect them to do some work, get some magical preparations, be able to breathe underwater. That's fine. The next thing I'll hit them with is, your visibility is poor because you're below the water. The light doesn't go that deep. Well, what's going to happen when they start, kicking up all that muck and dirt around you? You're not going to be able to see. That's better than a fog spell. How
much freedom do you tend to allow your characters within that sort of story, the storyline that you set up? For example, if you had a group of player characters who decided to side with the bad guy, how would you handle that?
So I was posed that question when I ran Curse of Strahd, and I simply told the players that's the end of the game. Like, you go down that route, like that's not the point of that campaign. So I'm just gonna tell you up front, I'm not gonna allow you, because that's not the point of this campaign. Don't do that. If you're gonna go for a more sandbox style where the characters over time give in, and I just managed to slowly but surely whittle down their morality and their beliefs, and their principles become more and more rubbery. At that point, I can see that being done, because that is a nice twisted turn of fate. The people who might have been, like the cleric, for example, might suddenly find, well, I don't really have my powers anymore. I might have to see if I can be adopted in by another faith, and how that's going to be going. I mean, these are choices, and there's going to be consequences to that. Anyone who has got powers that depend on an entity beyond just a spell book, they're going to find that there's going to be some entities that doesn't like the fact that they now swapped sides.
I mean, in saying my OSE game, if someone wants to make a cleric of Krampus and be a secret bad guy, they're more than welcome to. Hint, you could do that if you want, but that's entirely up to you.
Exactly, but like I wouldn't. If we're going to go for like my Saturday game where it's more open, the players can run around and do what they want, would I stop them? No, I would adjust accordingly. I'll probably be putting more attention towards, well, now the good guys are going to be seen as the bad guys, and we basically swap it around that way. But I give my group a lot of freedom. If the group decides that, we're now going to go and target this organization or this entity, and we're going to have to like find a way to like stop them from making money. My Saturday group did that, but they didn't set out to do it. They found a location where the evil Yonti had set up a thing. Well, I stole an item called basically its manufacturer from Stars Without Number, but it allows the Yuan-Ti to basically generate money every DM turn. And that meant that they were generating money, and they could then fund themselves to go out and do other things. Neat little trick. How were they doing it? Well, the Yuan-Ti were evil bastards. They kidnapped people, and they used polymorph to turn them into monsters that they then sold on to the Drow. And they were generating money through this production of monsters on demand by just having highly educated wizards who have been exposed to the various kinds of monsters and basically told them, here's how you do it, here's how you dominate their minds, here's how you carve into their their bones, make sure that it doesn't break. Once that's done, here's how you cast a spell, produce as many of these. We're now going to help you enslave several packs of gnolls to be your bodyguards. Keep producing it and keep draining this area of humanoids, of people, of any of these ones, and just keep on selling them that way. When the players came in and stopped that, that was a huge financial blow for the Yuan-Ti. They've now lost a major pipeline that dried out very quickly because their operations relied on that thing to go unnoticed.
Manfred, I'm not too worried about the fact that Saxius has set up base on my island. There is something called the M5 between us, and the M5 is horribly congested just north of Bristol. So I plenty of time to build up my defences.
Unfortunately, yes, but I can go across to Wales and then through there. Ah, yes, John. The alternatives have been found.
Welsh towns now have a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. It'll take you just as long.
Never mind. I shall take to my balloons. I shall arrive in style.
Heretic has said any of Saxius' games on the YouTubes would love to see him in action. Saxius doesn't have a channel. He doesn't have a channel. No.
I do not record myself, and unfortunately, I don't really have the time to do that. I either invest too much of my personal time into my work, or I get lost into doing my D&D games.
I would love to have in hindsight, I would love to have recorded our game we had, Shadow of the Demon Lord, because I think people would have found it amusing, if a little bit disturbing at times. I didn't.
I don't think YouTube would have allowed you to keep that on for very long. The things you did on there was well beyond PG-18.
Not just me.
You as a group to just that's a good example where I allowed the players to have freedom, and it worked, but barely. You were the bad guys. You were the bad guys at the end of the day.
We changed sides multiple times.
Just what part of that sentence sounds good to you?
All of it.
It's all about me.
We were goblins doing goblin things, not understanding the
anyway. Going back
ways of the
to
world.
Big Bad and the Evil.
I want to address the players turning thing.
Yes.
All right, my cat. The neighbor's cat is in the window, so one of my cats is losing his collective shit now, and that's just fun. Not to pigeonhole myself,
go on.
But in a superhero game, I've always warned my players.
Yeah.
If you want to be villains, be villains. Doesn't mean I'm going to play the heroes as dumb, just because you decide to be villains. Because if you read comic books, villains always lose until the 90s. And I don't do 90s. I do 80s and 70s. So go ahead and play villains, but you're going to lose. And I got to put myself on mute and go deal with this fucking chaos behind me. Hang on.
Have fun. No, but I do agree, though, because let's flip the table here. Let's actually discuss about the players being evil.
Go on then.
All right. Right off the bat, you are starting off with a massive disability. You have now chosen, like, let's say the players have got, let's go right off into the deep end. The players are going, I'm going to play a hobgoblin. I'm going to be playing an orc. Oh, I'm allowed to play a half troll. Oh, this is so awesome. You've now picked the most monstrous creatures that can be picked on. most villagers will look at you and go, I am going to go and get the Baron and his 100 archers, and we will fill you with holes. 2 attacks per turn. We can shoot you from yards away. You don't stand a chance. So if the players go like, oh, we're going to be evil, we're D&D setting, we're going to go for all the evil things, massive disability, it will have some opportunities. You now get to turn the world on its head and show, yes, there are evil cities that exists. There is a network of traveling. However, once you're outside the walls, you're fair game to everyone else, because even evil have got certain civility within areas of agreed neutrality. Go on, Bear.
And just to address heredity, they kicked the snot out of Jarvis. they beat up the butler, dude. Come on. Anyway,
that's like picking a fight with Alfred.
It's the 90s rewrote comic books. We went through the deconstruction of superheroes as a result. And the deconstruction started by your fellow countryman, by the way, Alan Moore, and carried on by Frank Miller in the U.S. And then the entirety of Image Comics through the 90s destroyed the concept of heroic behavior. Hence why my game is called Heroic. Yep. Because I don't want to read about villains winning the day.
No.
It's good once in a while as a change, as a difference. But heroes should be heroes.
It's just dawned on me. There's a band I like, PWEI, Pop Will Eat Itself, and they have a lyric. There's a song they've done, Can You Dig It, which is all about pop culture, and it mentions lots of superheroes and villains. And there was a line in that song, Alan Moore knows the score. And I now know what it refers to.
Yeah. Alan Moore, like Garth Ennis, is one of these people who can't stand superheroes and thinks they're for children. So the only way they could write them was to make them idiots and deconstruct them into garbage, right?
Yeah.
Clay feet, as they say, heroes with feet of clay.
Yeah.
So what does a big bad evil do for us at that point in time? It gives us something to rally the heroes around. It gives us something to focus the attention of the heroes and allow them to break off the clay of their feet and rise above the occasion.
Again, yes, it's a focal point. It's a focus point for all that's good, and especially for the players. I like to refer to it as the North Star. It's the direction that you're heading towards. It doesn't have to be in a straight line. It can be going this way, that way, but we all know at the end of the day, that's the direction you're going. This is what you're looking to overcome one way or another. It can be roundabout.
A customer in my shop today.
Yeah.
Hello, Mick the Sniper. Welcome to the chat.
I am. But again, if you don't mind me jumping over to talk about, again, the players being the evil characters, there are, again, assuming that they haven't gone into the deep end and are playing evil, monstrous creatures, well, now you're going to have to play it a lot more subtly. And it will be likely, again, so certain disadvantages, especially if you're a cleric who has now had to devote themselves to an evil deity. Well, you're going to have to do certain things or cast certain spells that can be quickly identified to being less than savory. Not to mention that, especially for clerics, you need to have a certain medallion and a holy symbol to your deity. That's going to stand out. So how do you go about that? Well, again, this is back to the players have now intentionally given themselves a disability, and they've now got to find ways to overcome it. So that's now down for the players to think these things through. Because as a DM, you've just been, well, I speak from my perspective. If a group of players came to me and said, I want to play an evil group, like, please go on. It will be open hunting season for me. All of the goody two shoes walking into I'm just thinking of some things my players have done. Just get into a forest and just kill willy-nilly all the animals. The ranger's gonna hunt you down and string you up before you are brought over to the authorities. They will not accept anything like that. The druids will beat you with clubs like a piñata for doing such absolute unholy actions. And that's before I'm going to be bringing in the master huntsman from the town, who's going to have to deal with the fact that there's now going to be an increase of wolves, and the fact that you have now, directly attacked property of the local lord, I can go on for how I would just make the player's life hell for trying to be evil if they weren't also going to be playing it very intelligently.
I'm going to come back to our Shadow of the Demon Lord game here.
Go on.
And I remember the expression on your face when we were doing our various acts, and how much hell we put you through as well. And yes, you did give us hell back. And yes, there were consequences, there were repercussions.
The problem, yes.
Yeah, but it can bounce both ways, because
most certainly can. It most certainly can. I have learned and I have grown.
Anyhow, all right. Right, let's go to introducing the bad guy.
Yes.
Obviously, this depends on the length of your campaign. But how soon do you like to make the players aware of a main bad guy? If you're running a long campaign, do you put him at the forefront at the start and then pull him back, or do you sort of introduce hints as the time goes on?
Oh, that's a good question, because you can do both.
Yeah.
I'm just going to use the 5th edition Curse of Strahd. Strahd is very much from the very forefront, like presented to the players as being an important person. The moment that they enter Barovia, it's quite clear, he's a big person. He's a powerful entity. He's kind of a dangerous dude. You don't want to, do too much. And even at level 3, you have the opportunity for the players to unwisely just go, let's go into Castle Ravenloft. We could take on this man. Oh boy. And I've wiped several players around just to show them that I'm Strahd. He's not going to take shit from you. He's going to laugh and throw you off the bridge and watch you tumble 1,000 feet down. But you can also go the other route where they are very distant. I know that there's a few Call of Cthulhu campaigns or series where you don't really know what it is until the very end. The build-up is just so suspenseful as it goes closer and closer. You unveil more and more as the fabric of reality around you becomes more questionable, and you're ultimately presented with something. And then at that point, it all starts making sense. Like, of course, it's, this is a ghoul that's taking a deep passion into art, and all the different artists are now being drawn into his little grotto where he imprints them onto artwork for them to forever be trapped as a part of his display for the world. Those are things that you can build up towards. So what is the pacing of the campaign? That's the question I usually ask myself. Are we looking at a very quick, few sessions? At which point, throw the dang thing out there, get them interested, pull it back, make them, sort of like scramble towards it. Unless we are now dealing with a more slow burner. Well, now I don't want you to know too much. I want you to build towards it. I want you to go and poke things. I want you to be cautious about what you do and sort of like get you intrigued, interested, go from point to point, ask questions. So the pacing really is important to set the tone of the campaign, and ultimately also how I would use that to bring about the BBG. I'll stop talking now because I tend to talk a lot.
That's good.
I have literally nothing to add.
Fair.
I don't play D&D. I don't run D&D, and sadly, I can't relate to that stuff from a D&D point of view. The stuff I run and play, John doesn't like as a general rule because it's modern, it's sci-fi, it's stuff that he has no interest in.
But so I like it.
Sorry?
But I like it, so you can talk to me about it.
Yes, I know, but it is still John's show at the end of the day, and I try and be respectful as a Canadian.
I'll just sit back here. Oh, you go on, Bear. Go on, Bear. Talk about how you.
It is John's show, and I am here to adjudicate.
Yes, indeed. I just think that way too much thought is put into all of this, right? Like, this is the thing. Your players are your players. You set up the campaign, you set up in your mind, even if you don't tell them what the BBEG is going to be, and you go from there. They will uncover it as they go. You can give them lots of smoke and mirrors and misdirect them and make them think, oh, it's the principal from Buffy who's the bad guy. But it turns out it's not the principal from Buffy. It's this other guy who was the master of the principal from Buffy. But Sachs makes a good point. Sachs makes a good point, which is if the campaign is going to be short, cut to the chase. First session, BBEG. He's on the scene. We know he exists. She, them, they, I don't care. And move from that point. Long-term campaign, go for that slow burn. Let them have some success before you take it away from them and teach them that they're not as tough as they thought they were, and have the BBEG's minions spank them down and give them a reason to come back. And that's where you can get your 3-act storytelling in, right? First act, the players are doing the best they can. Second act ends on a downer. Third act, they rally, they come back, they save the day.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way you tell the story. Now, that's how you write a story. Players are players. They are going to do what players do, which is chaotically fuck everything you've planned directly to the wall and then take selfies with the mess they've made, because that's what players do. So, why aren't you? Why aren't you dancing the same dance? Don't marry yourself to your plot. Don't marry yourself to your story. Adapt, overcome, challenge, dance. In a superhero game, you have to. Because if you don't, the players are going to take out the villain pretty quick unless he's so powerful they can't take him out pretty quick. In a sci-fi game, you're going to be dealing with so many other things that, you got to really sort of make sure you're moving and going, because players can do whatever they want. In a fantasy game, it does tend to be more linear overall because of the nature of fantasy, but you can still adapt, overcome, and dance. So if I'm inviting you to my table, I'm inviting you to the dance.
Yeah.
And dance with the one that brought you, because that's what's going to happen. Therefore, BBG, awesome. When to reveal, like Sachs said, depending on the pace of your campaign. That's all you need to know. If you overplan, you set yourself up for failure because you will no longer be flexible. Neil Gaiman, I'm sure you've heard of him. He's a writer. He said a story or a plot should be like planning a vacation. You don't have a map of every single thing you're going to do on your vacation. You have the sites you want to visit, and then you let the adventure take you to them. Well, it's the same thing for storytelling. Have the set pieces in your mind, have the encounters in your mind, have those moments that count in your mind, but let the players take you on the adventure that gets you to them.
Oh,
and
yeah.
by remaining flexible, your big bad guy seems even more terrifying. And that's when you really get in their heads.
Oh, definitely. And sometimes all you need is just to get that foot through the door to get into their head. And then once you're in, it's very difficult to get them out, to get you out of their heads again. I only say this because I take personal enjoyment of doing that to my players. But that's just a part of my tactics when I DM.
For everybody who's saying that it doesn't matter on the system, really, Call of Cthulhu as a system forces tropes and decisions upon you. Star Trek as a system forces tropes and decisions on you. Star Wars as a system, D&D. The system does matter because it will affect your storytelling based on A, what the game is designed to do, and B, if you're not using a homegrown universe, what the universe you're playing in is designed to do.
There are a lot of factors.
Because some games, for example, take a typical D&D game. I know, Bear, you're not playing that sort of game at the moment, but
yeah,
it's highly unlikely a brand new party of first level characters will ever have a chance to take down a campaign big bad guy.
True.
Unless simply because they're going to need to gain power first. They're going to need to gain items. They're going to need to gain spells. But in Call of Cthulhu, they need to gain information. While, like saying with the mechanics, Call of Cthulhu, they need to gain information while systematically becoming weaker.
Yeah.
And how much of themselves do they give up to get that information?
So this
And that
boils it
trade-off.
down to is level and class a feature or a flaw, and it can be either, really,
Yeah,
depending on what you want to do with the game. So that's the season. So skill-based games are always going to be superior for generic storytelling, or as General says, classic storytelling. He doesn't think it works in games. I think it can, all in how you approach it. But class and level, like you just said, those first level characters can't do what they need to do. They got to go out, they got to get levels, they got to get magic items, they got to build up their power base, and then with that, they can then try and take on the big bad guy. Call of Cthulhu, right away, they're dealing with the big bad guy, or at least his minions, and what have you. And they're probably batshit crazy by the time they meet him, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. I say, with Call of Cthulhu, as I say, it's all about gaining knowledge. You don't gain knowledge is power in Call of Cthulhu, rather than levels.
And I agree with what Chris says. The GM has to make the system work, but the players also have to make the system work.
Yeah.
It's always going to be a group event. It can't be one-sided. If it's one-sided, it's just a lecture. It has to be back and forth. Nothing is more frustrating than players who don't know how their shit works, or they don't know how the game works, and therefore you're trying to get this big bad story going, and they're busy trying to figure out what their spells can do, while they're casting them. It's not fun. And then they become the big bad, by the way, to the game, because they are causing it to break down. Look, our hobby can be a lot of fun, and it can be extremely frustrating, and it can be extremely trying, but it can still be a lot of fun. I focus on the fun.
Oh, definitely. But that's why we have this hobby to begin with. We want fun. We want escapism. And I mean, ultimately, we are, weaving ourselves into a story of one way or another. We just happen to use a mathematical system or a storytelling system to get there for the same destination, which is to have fun. And there are certain, we can rely on certain tropes or setups, as Bear said, like, there's an overarching evil, there's the underdogs rising up to challenge it and hopefully overcome it. It's a story that many people like, and sometimes we just happen to be called nerds by certain hunger.
Certain Starvarians.
Certain Starvarians, yes. And this is what you should always do to bad guys, as long as the chatbot is working. Is the chatbot working?
You're going to have to show me how you do all this stuff, these polls and chatbots. I don't have any of this stuff in my stream yard.
Well, the chatbot hasn't started by the looks of things, so it looks like I have failed to get it working tonight. Because I haven't got a message up for Hungar. Does any of it work? Does any of it work?
I don't think so.
Oh.
No.
Oh, yeah. So why did the Hungar one not work?
Did you have to do with capital?
Unless it's filtered out nuts now. Has it added new filtering? It's meant to say kick them in the nuts.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, don't tell me that. Well, they've been messing about with YouTube last few days. Don't tell me they're now filtering. They're now filtering nuts. Oh well. Oh well. Yes, it is working for you. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
seems like this is a topic where we're just all in agreement, right?
We need to find something more controversial. Like,
we need a contrarian in here who says, "No, you're wrong, and here's why."
Right. Okay. Methods of introducing a big bad guy.
the backstory.
No, you don't swear like that.
You asked for a contrarian. I'll try.
Oh, I can be one if you'd like. I don't
Yeah. Methods of introducing a big bad guy.
Comets. What? Sorry, I thought that would be useful.
How do we introduce a big bad evil guy into the campaign?
And how do you make the players hate them?
Oh, making them hate them is easy.
Just
Absolutely,
take their
yeah. Well,
literally just
Take their shit. Exactly. Just
literally
have the guy
walk up
take
to them.
their shit away.
Let's have some juicy examples. Some things that you've done.
Oh god.
Sax, listen, I am Elric, Sax's Stormbringer. In the final analysis, he was 1,000 times more evil than I, so I'll let him take this one.
Oh. I had the necromancer animate one of the players' corpses and then had the rest of the party to put that down. And I then had the necromancer laugh and trick them into believing that by destroying the body, they had destroyed the possibility of resurrection. That got that group very mad, and I didn't, elaborate on it. So the group decided that they had to hunt this necromancer down. I have done the wonderful thing of spiked their drinks. I have done with poison, of course. I have just done petty shit like have a thief steal from them, have just take one of their boots. They are so players will become so possessive that I don't even need to get out the keys and jingle them for them to go somewhere. I just need to take their shoes and throw it in the direction I need them to go in, and they will run. They will bolt after that thing like I have just taken half of their wealth. Take a copper piece from them, they will get angry at you. My real life group, when one of them failed to do a proper, when they failed to set up proper watches, I had thieves steal a handful of coins from them and insert a specific minted coin for the bad guys, so that the bad guys could just scry upon them at any given time. The players, more or less realizing that they didn't set up the right ones, basically went, okay, how much have we lost? And they learned that they had lost money. They went straight back in there and they began interrogating all of the urchins. Like, who stole from us? Who did it? We're gonna find them and we will, get back the coins. We don't care. As the heretic says, they took my one copper piece boots. Like, they will. They will. My second edition group have started accumulating cursed items and putting them on display within their mansion. Why? Because they're fed up with me having break-in attempts against their house. So they're now intentionally putting cursed items out for the thieves to take, and it has worked. They don't get broken into anymore, but that just goes to show that, the rest of the world will react accordingly. You've got pretty stuff, you've got money, then we're going to start to steal from you. Yeah, go on, Bear.
I'm a little more vicious than that.
Yeah.
I just kill their families and their backstories and kidnap their love interests and really take any. Like, I have players now who have played with me for 20 years who refuse to have backgrounds for their characters anymore. Like, I'm just giving you sticks to beat me with, and I'm like, yeah, of course you are.
Yeah,
but it works. It works really, really well.
Well, I don't get a lot of backstories these days because of that reason. I have, I say a lie. There has been one player who braved to giving me a backstory, and I've highlighted various parts of his backstory to give him trauma with. But yeah, like I didn't mind getting a backstory. I mean, I've, like you said, like I've done that as well. I've just not been doing it in recent years. This is last time I did. I think it was like 8 to 10 years ago that I had players give me family members and things like that I could do. Golden
would you like to know the most evil thing I ever did to a player ever?
Go on.
Like, this is, I, as a more mature adult looking back at my college years, go, that's pretty evil. I will use certain words to avoid any algorithms getting mad at John for certain elements of the story that happened. We were running a marble game. My buddy, Corey, not Corey, no, it was Longshot, was playing this teleporting ninja guy that it was late 80s, early 90s, right? And his girlfriend was a superhero named Corona, and she was basically loosely a copy of Firestar from Spider-Man's Amazing Friends. Okay. Their enemy was a villainess named Chimera, who I had established as being a fairly ruthless individual who could shape change into anything or anything living and anyone. Well, Corona and Longshot's character, whose name I can't remember, I think it was TriStar or something like that, were quite in love with each other. So Chimera's goons kidnapped her. And for 5 sessions, they went on the grand heroic quest to get her back. And they did. And they broke open the cell that she was in, and TriStar ran up to her and grabbed his girlfriend by the shoulders, and she just started screaming at the top of her lungs and backpedaling away from him. And the player was just like, what's going on? I don't understand what's going on. They eventually learned, and again, everyone paying attention, this was insanely evil, and it was 1992. No, 1991, just so we're clear. For the weeks and weeks and weeks that Chimera had possession of Corona, she had shapeshifted herself to look exactly like his character, sound like his character, and just abused, and I won't go into details, and tortured, and just made that person have PTSD in relation to the love of her life. And,
Nice.
Yeah, it was pretty fucking evil.
But yeah, like if you take it into like the aspect of what it's like in real life, then absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how to make characters hate a bad guy. Though that's perfect.
Oh, they wanted her dead after that. Like that was it. Their herodom fled as they started plotting murder, and I'm just like, you guys do this, you become villains.
In my Curse of Strahd campaign, one of the players, so you've got Ishmark and you've got Irina. Basically, one of the players basically developed a strong interest towards Ishmark. Happy days. Could use that. Definitely abused it a few times when I needed to. And when I needed them all to go back to fight Strahd, I just had Strahd summon 4 of his minions and kidnap Ishmark as well as a couple of other good friends that the players had made to bring them into Castle Ravenloft. At that point, we had I had seen we had achieved what we needed. The players were still trying to tinker and get things in order so that they could get everything. I was like, nope, not anymore. You've spent enough time. Players come in, they fight Strahd. They beeline straight for Strahd to fight him. Once they defeat Strahd, that's when they start going searching for many of the people. Most of them are not alive. They then find Ishmark, and the player who had developed a liking for this NPC rushes in there and learns that Ishmark has been turned into a vampire. And the sun is rising. And I present the player with a choice. What will your character do? This is the person you have developed feelings for. Will you allow them to exist? Or will you, take action here? Which was a callback to session 1 of the Curse of Strahd, because I presented them with the option of what they had to do with the father, the priest, from the village of Barovia, and his son, who has become a vampire spawn, and the players could not make a decision. They were frozen with fear about having to make such a big thing, as I role-played out the father pleading to let his son live. And now I was presenting the same problem, that someone close to them was in such a position. Now they had to decide whether he should live, though suffer, or if they were going to have to put him down. And that was a decision where I did see one of the players sit there quite miffed and upset that I had done that to an NPC that she really liked.
See, both of you are clearly far more evil than I am. I mean, all I ever needed my old face-to-face group with D&D is to have a potential bad guy try and tell them what to do. That was it. That was it. Anyone tried to tell them what to do, immediately they were like, "We're not being told what to do."
Yeah,
That-
that's
That sounds like a very British thing. It's like, you're not the boss of me.
yeah.
Yeah, you're not the boss of me. Yeah, yeah. And it was always very simple, very very simple. But yeah, I can certainly I could do with fleshing out bad guys. I think a little more and
Just
running them long term a bit more.
when they go to like do something nice for them. Like if they are in a region, have a family of peasants invite the players into the house, look after them, offer them meals, have the wife basically go like, "Oh, your clothes has been damaged a bit. Why don't I just stitch that together for you? You make the players like them, make them return there. You see, however many times you can sort of lure them back to this place, make them enjoy staying there, and then one evening just have them wake up to the smell of burn of just fire,
Aw.
and just let them deal with that. And then that is the sign of the big bad evil guy learning where they were, barring the doors and placing a nice big, what's it called, stack of hay in front of it, lighting that on fire and leaving. And
Yeah.
you just do that. See how the players are going to react to that. They've now lost genuine friends, or worse yet, their friends live, but they're now destitute. Their lands are gone. Their tools have been, burned to the ground. They are homeless now. They have to make decisions. These are some of the evil things you can do if the players invest. If the players invest in, then you can do all of these horrible things, and that you can make them feel a genuine investment and a genuine drive for going out and committing cold-blooded murder. Though if the players decide that they don't care, if all the people around them are just pieces of paper scribbled down by the DM, at that point it's a very different game, and it's a very different kind of investment. I thrive, as you can probably tell, on feedback. When I can see reactions and engagement and investment, maybe even an unhealthy amount of emotional attachment to characters or worlds or situations, I like using that to delve deeper in, for the players to get involved and get, get immersed into the world. When that isn't around, it's hard for me to get my own personal drive to then try and up it up and to get it more exciting, both for them and for myself. So, to repeat what Bear said, it's a dance and it takes two.
Yeah, but the players you're describing, the ones who just see it as a piece of paper and all that, they're not dancing, they're moshing. They're in the mosh pit. So that's where you hit them with hammers. You don't worry about their emotional investment, because their emotional investment is success. Their emotional investment is their treasure. Their emotional investment is their gear. Their emotional investment is their character, nothing else. Okay. Well, now I know where to hit. That's all I need to know.
The dragon has been hoarding copper pieces.
That's just mean.
No, that's the level. We are gonna go to these levels.
We defeated the dragon. What's the treasure? 10,000 million copper pieces.
Exactly. They don't.
No.
The dragon, even in death, the dragon still wins. That's the place.
Actually, he's a big fan of costume jewelry. He really liked shiny glass.
Obscure artworks. Oh, I have done that before. Just be like, oh, here's some money over there, and then pieces of artwork, statues, and and places. Like, well, I'm just going to go for the coins and leave. And they're like, well, you don't want the artwork. You don't want to do the effort. You don't want to go to galleries and meet snobs. You don't want to roleplay. Oh no! It's a shame that you don't get as much XP from the gold you found. I swear,
So we are learning that. I think that Saxius is the big bad evil guy. I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
You just
How do you do in the poll in the end? What was the final vote on that? It's still you,
Well-
man. You're still
well
ahead.
spoken, well spoken, Brits. I demand a recount. I would like to bring in an audit, preferably one of Swiss origin.
Yeah, I've never really managed to translate my evil streak to fantasy games as well as I do when I'm doing Call of Cthulhu. I think I sort of lean into the genre a little more with Call of Cthulhu.
Not just
I think.
you and correct me if I'm wrong, but you do have your preference for where it is best to bring it out. I think, just correct me if I'm wrong, if it was you, Bear, but someone did mention that the systems do play a big part in terms of what the expectations and what the mechanics are going to be bringing about when you do this. Yes, someone with skills, talents, and experience can probably translate what you do in Call of Cthulhu into D&D. It doesn't do it one for one, so you have to do your own conversion for that. But Call of Cthulhu, on its own, for someone who hasn't ever run it before, if they picked it up and tried to get into it, buy the modules themselves. They're written well enough that you can go, well, it's A, B, C, and D, and at every single stage there are certain events that takes place, which, as you mentioned, John, it lowers the strength of the characters as they get closer towards their goal. And that's the point, that's the experience that you're meant to be getting out of it. And it's important for you, especially as a game master, dungeon master, storyteller, you need to know the system. I mean, hell, I will do a throwback time to the TED talk I did on this stream. You've got to read the books. You have to you actually have to read the books and understand what the books are trying to tell you, because there's a reason for why the mechanics work a certain way. There's a reason for why there's a certain tone. There's a reason for why we've got the GM section, because they try to help you get an idea of what do you do in this. All of the different systems are trying to do something different to get your attention and your money. And they're justifying that by giving you, here is the experience from our playtesting. Here's what we wanted out of it. Here you can now go and try and duplicate it in your own fashion.
I mean, I'm generally, I think I'm probably better at making a D&D environment evil rather than concoct machinations of an evil bad guy, and that's mainly because I tend to create exploration-based games where the exploration is as much of the story.
Geek, you just have to send me a message, and I will be your counselor. I will step in and I will ask you, what's the interest of this evil NPC? I see, he's a banker, very evil, and we will build it from around there.
I'm still tempted to make you a big bad guy in that game.
I will give you all my resources to make that a reality.
If you want to try it, why not take Cthulhu and then take Dark Ages Cthulhu and run a fantasy campaign using that?
I'm just basically medieval and Cthulhu.
Yeah, and make that wizard really regret looking up spells.
I'm just thinking of all the poor peasants who opens the book and goes, "This looks very pretty. Why are the symbols moving?"
I don't know, but I just killed my family.
Yeah, I think I do need to redo the poll at some point during this stream, because I think people would change their vote about now.
No, you're British. You still win.
Yeah.
So, ways of introducing a big bad guy, as in that first time they become aware. What are your tried and tested methods of making that initial making the players initially aware of the big bad guy existing.
Bless you.
I'm just yawning if that makes
Oh, I
difference.
thought you sneezed. Sorry.
How I introduced the big bad evil. Right, so I have some steps on that. I start by looking at what is their intelligence, and I can repeat myself and talk about my second edition and the Yuan-Ti. They weren't introduced because they were highly intelligent. They were a shadow individual. So I start by looking at who is it, how intelligent are they, what are their resources, and I build from there. Now, if the tempo is long term, then I want it to be dripping in, bit by bit, building it up. Simply because that, in my experience, having the slow build up, because I like doing slow burners, where the players are thinking like, okay, there is something going on, even if the threat is kind of visible, that there is, for example, because Strahd, it's a vampire, but you're not facing the vampire on the regular. Strahd just appears whenever he pleases, for whatever reason, and that's it. He comes and goes as he wants, but it's the build up towards that I really want to focus on. So I like to go with my tried and tested method of slow, steady, incremental building it up, and at most steps of the way, I add more and more and more shit to the players' plates, so that they feel.
That's how I introduced my big evil right there. Right there, on top of the bookshelf, the two of them.
They're behaving themselves.
Mystery. Sorry, what?
They're behaving themselves there right now.
Yeah, well, they've had their big row with the window, so now they're like, "Oh, we'll chill out." But you got to do mystery, right?
Mm.
You can't just show the hand. Dribs, drabs, visions, dreams, results. That farmhouse we were talking about earlier. How about this? How about they met those people on the way to the dungeon? They helped them out. They fed them. They put them up for the night. And on their way back out of the dungeon, burned to the ground, crucified farm family. Why? Because they helped you. Things like that get in their heads. But if you just go, I'm a big bad guy, they go, whatever.
See, my last D&D campaign that I wrote before I set up the Discord channel, the campaign started at a council meeting in the player's hometown. And the leader of the council basically got up and said, this whole council malarkey, it isn't working. We're not we're not profiting enough. We're not expanding our control enough. I hereby declare the council dissolved and I'm in charge. And he said, I am now the king of this land and you are all now my servants.
Okay, and?
One of the player characters answered him back. They got kicked out the council meeting and forced to flee the town.
Yeah, that'll work.
And the party were now pretty much outcasts from that town, as him and his henchmen slowly as he basically built an army and started growing his empire. And the idea was that he was actually a polymorphed blue dragon who just wanted blue dragons are the ultimate in greed in terms of the dragonkin in dragonkind in D&D. Right. And he just wanted all the loot in the land to be his, and didn't care how he got them. But he was using organizational tactics because they're lawful evil. So he was organized. His followers didn't know he was a blue dragon. The party found out he was a blue dragon when they were about level 6 later on, when they started encountering other polymorph dragons. But as far as they knew at the start, he was just a full of himself warlord with hard henchmen.
Yeah,
But
so how do I go about this? But there's also the build up towards the big bad. Them as Ben said, them coming out proclaiming themselves. That's for most players who are like, oh, okay, cool. But having to build up, getting the investment, that's definitely one way to sort of draw the players in.
they were becoming more invested as it went on when they were finding out what his troops were doing.
Okay,
that was the idea.
So okay, but they're talking about it in the chat. It's basically the Jaws situation, right? In the movie Jaws, Spielberg wanted to show the shark right away. The problem is the robotic shark they made sank to the bottom and wouldn't function, so they had to take it off to be repaired. But he still had to shoot. So he shot POV shots from the shark. He shot fins in the water. He did everything he could except show the shark because it wasn't ready. And that made that movie 10,000 times more terrifying than it would have been if we'd just seen a big, stupid robotic shark in the first act, right? So you gotta string your players along. You can't show them behind the curtain. They have to get hints and bits and things like that and echoes, shadows. And they'll make it bigger in their head than it actually will be. They'll cook it into something truly, truly disturbing. And they'll talk. They'll run their mouths. And you listen.
Going back though to what I said really early on though, the idea of the game was it would be more sandboxy, and the party slowly learnt that all of the chromatic dragons were walking the land in some form of hidden form, and all of them were potentially capable of doing what this guy was doing. So you've got
the question: why do they care?
The idea behind that campaign was that there was only one of each color of dragon, and each dragon was a manifestation of an aspect of sentient being's personality.
Mm-hmm.
So silver dragon, knowledge. The gold dragon was goodness. The copper dragon, I believe, was trickery. The green dragon was duplicity. The blue dragon was greed. And the world is meant to be in balance. The main god is neutral, intensely neutral. And the dragons are bound to not affect the balance of the world. But dragons being dragons are greedy. And the world was going in cycles where it would grow and expand, and societies would expand. And then inevitably these immortal dragons, because they were all immortal, one of them would step out of line and cause the world to implode. Society would scatter, go underground into caves. The god would pull the dragons back, give them their dressing down, but the world, because they're all parts of human psyche and human belief, they would slowly then manifest themselves back. The world would grow, and then one would step out of line, and thus the cycles would repeat.
Okay, and again I ask, why do the players care?
Because they were the innocent people of the world were suffering.
Doesn't sound like a sandbox to me, brother. It sounds like a plot story that you were running with the illusion of it being a sandbox.
Well, the idea was that the players could go pretty much anywhere. The world was being created as they moved around. The little plot hooks were being storylines were being created as they moved around, and I had no plan of an ending as such. It depended on what the players did. So there was no story plotted out. It was whatever the players were looking to do. I would think up something around it and work out how would that have repercussions on the world, and who would rise up and who would get involved.
I hate sandboxes, so I don't understand them. I don't understand the appeal of them. So I'm just like, okay, sounds like a plot story to me.
But the players were getting invested because I asked them all what the players, what their own characters wanted.
Yeah.
And I was bringing those into
the
campaign.
Look at all the nerds. Look at all the nerds telling me that sandboxes can have plots. Hungar, call them nerds, please. No, I get it. I just do not like sandboxes. It's like it's the phrase du jour in the scene these days, and I'm just like, whatever. I don't qualify my campaigns as sandboxes, hex crawls, plot driven. It's a campaign. What happens. Let's find out. It'll be fun.
I mean, I'm here to have fun, however I can. But
sorry, Eli. They were on sale. I got you too, buddy. Double deuce.
I mean, there's other things I was doing in the campaign was things like I had a few villages dotted around. It was up to the players which village they decided as outlaws they wanted to hole up in. And when they decided they wanted to go, and they were rescuing people who were suffering due to the conflict and bringing them back to their village. And I was rolling random sort of professions for these people and making changes to their village over time based on the professions of the people they were bringing in, and training a militia and all that sort of stuff. They had that sort of that freedom. They had that freedom. So it was a developing game.
Sure.
But it's not your sort of game, is it?
No.
No, but that's fine though. We all have our preferences. We all have the things that we like, and that's fine. Bringing it back to evil and the introduction of them, we've already established it's down to the pacing. It's down to what the overarching sort of like setup that we want to do. How like power wise have we covered that? How strong we make the villains, whether we go the route of starting them off at the very tip point and then have the players crawl the mountain to get up towards them, or do the enemies or the big evil guys rise in power as the players also progress in their own path? Or how do we go about that?
It totally depends on the length of the campaign and the system.
Yeah, the reason why I ask is that when I did a Star Wars campaign, one of the things that the players pointed out was that if you wanted power really quickly, you should be a Sith. They will give you powers very well. If you looked at
there can be only two, so you're going to die.
Well, yeah, but that's not the point. We're specifically looking mechanically. Mechanically, how quickly were you going to be as you leveled up? How much power would you get, and when would it plateau, and so on, versus the Jedis, and how the Jedis had a much longer slot, but then at the very late game they were meant to be more powerful, whereas the Siths were more rushing to get the good stuff immediately. But that was a big lure for many of the players. It's like, well, we know that Oscar is a bit of a bastard. He will, have, someone run over someone. If you fight someone and you decide, like, what, I'm going to get out my flame and flame them up and down. Well, if they've got grenades on you and the heat sort of gets through that, that can go boom. I will do that because why not? And as well as various other things. But the whole thing was just, a discussion of, what kind of power progression that they wanted. But that's my question is, evil, in my perspective, antagonists, they don't go by the honorable, usually not by the honorable route. They usually strive towards getting the power as quickly as possible. So do you portray that while the players are ascending, in their own adventure, or do you go about you're putting them at that much higher pedestal, and then for the players to climb the mountain to get to them, so to speak? If any of my ramblings are making sense here.
For me,
Um,
if the players are more powerful than the evil or on par, it's not a threat, really. I mean, it's a minor inconvenience. But if it's more powerful, then that's a challenge. And players rising to a challenge is going to be always better for me.
Yep.
I say, I mean, it depends on the type of game, the style of game, length of game, whatever. And I will admit, I do have a habit of cheating with that. When I was running the Lost City, I changed Zargon at the end to my own bad guy, and I didn't stat out the creature until I knew the players were going for him and how powerful the players were.
That's not cheating. That's just good DMing.
Okay, it's not cheating then.
Well, I'm the one calling for people to clip it, get it quickly, hit villains.
And I basically statted out to him to make him sure he was an incredibly hard enemy, and he would have been an incredibly hard enemy no matter how. If they'd have gone to him when they were level 4, he'd have been an incredibly hard enemy for a level 4 party. If they'd gone to him at level 8, he'd have been an incredibly hard enemy for a level 8 party. You've just got to make it memorable.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
as Omen now puts it out very correctly, it's like, and it's anticlimactic to find an enemy who's weak.
Yes.
And I've had discussions before of that. It's like, what do you make the local lord of a village? Do you make him a high level fighter, or what do you make him? It's like, well, he is whatever he needs to be.
Yeah.
What does the story need him to be? What does it make sense? Like, one lord is apparently a scholar. He's not going to have a lot of fighting capabilities, but he's going to be a very intelligent man that you can go to for certain things. Whereas the other guy, who was a former crusader, he's probably going to whack you around in the training ring. What do you need at the end of the day? And you've got the mechanics to build the rest around it. You don't have to.
Schrodinger's villain.
Yeah.
Until you encounter him, you don't know what he fully is.
I'm just going to reply to General Nut and Elfbait because they've sort of come back at me a little bit regarding that particular villain. He was incredibly difficult in a straight fight. There was knowledge that could be gained of a way of taking him out, and that way of taking him out wasn't going to be easy, but it was there to swing the fight in the party's favor and reward them for acquiring this particular piece of knowledge. So it was one of those things that they had to do a bit of investigating to make life a little bit easier. If they hadn't have found out that particular weakness, it was nigh on impossible. Not nigh on impossible, very difficult. But we have an Omen Owl arriving. But I had that weakness planned out from the start. It's actually in the adventure. I used what was in the adventure as the weakness, just made a bit more of it. So, and the party only went to get him once they discovered the weakness, and that was smart play on their part. It gave them a chance.
Well, I'm going to mention a few things that may be somewhat anticlimactic, but you want to reward players for playing smart, so there's that aspect. But
that was the weakness thing. That was the whole finding out the weakness.
Exactly, but you don't want it up to the point where they come over, and it was anticlimactic, but still somewhat humorous. Do you remember when we were in the dungeon trying to fight that one statue demon, and it only had 8 hit points?
Yes.
Yeah, but it was the fear of it, and then we finally came out like, oh, that was kind of easy when we killed it. But it wasn't the main.
That's because that's the way Gene had described it, though.
Yes,
Gene had done a good job of putting the fear into us because he described it as looking quite horrific. Well, we didn't know it was a one-hit dice, very, very minor demon.
Well, to be fair, if we hadn't had Angus, I mean, and it had killed you, that might have just been the end of the entire party. I mean, there's different layers of how dangerous something is, and you don't want players to feel that there isn't a danger. Like if we do an OSC and you fight a dragon, it only has 32 or 37 hit points, but that fear and danger is real, One breath weapon can take out the entire party if you aren't smart. And at least they don't feel that's necessarily anticlimactic. But you also don't want it to just to say, "Oh, you shoot it once, it's dead. That's it. Congratulations, goodbye." It's all right if Bard shoots Smog with one arrow and kills it, but it's not okay if he does that at the very beginning before they go into the Lonely Mountain. Say, "Oh, that stops the whole Hobbit," and like, "Oh, we're done." That's the way I feel about that. So and should you really stat out something? The other part is the individual doesn't have to be, but the final encounter has to be interesting. If he has really, buffed out guards and full plate and everything else, and you're like, we're just trying to kill him. Yeah, you might be able to throw a couple daggers and kill your main evil opponent, but that threat is still there, and the guards are still coming after you. So
why would they? Their boss is dead. They're not getting paid anymore.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
One of them might be planning to take over from their boss.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, but just this idea that, like, look, I got nothing. I'm letting it go. I'm letting it go. I'm literally letting it go because I'm about to actually argue with people, so I'm going to let it go.
Oh man, that's no. The real point really just comes down to that the threat has to be there. Is whenever
that we can agree on. The threat has to be there, but if the big bad exists, the big bad needs to be the goddamn threat. I would feel cheated as a player if we one-shotted the big bad at the end of a campaign.
I would agree there.
I agree that the expectation is the enemy, the big enemy at the end of the entire campaign. There should be something. There's expected to be a payoff, and what a part of that payoff is the struggle at the very end. I mean, my Saturday group still mocks me about a Hydra that I rolled the hit dice for, and 7 heads. It got 15 HP. They were able to take that out, just by doing almost twice the amount of damage that I had in HP in a single go. The players were stunned. They didn't know what it was. They were convinced it was undead because of how I described it. But at the very same time, when they then went up against the Battle of an Aboleth, that was a fight that really had them go tooth and nail, making use of illusion spells. The players really had to you think about, what's happening. The Aboleth moving and wiggling about in the water, throwing up dust and dirt inside of it so they can't be seen. Well, that's actually all suddenly an illusion. So they have to disbelieve it. But how would you disbelieve it when you know that's how it all works? So suddenly all this is happening, and domination is happening to players and NPCs alike. These are suddenly points where, the players are going like, this is getting serious. Someone got dominated, and Oscar can now make us do things that are horrifically evil. And
I think that the attitude to how much of a fight you get when you encounter the big bad guy does depend very much on the game you're playing.
Yep.
In a game like in a heroic fantasy game, they're expecting a big fight. They're expecting their George and the Dragon moment, or their Beowulf versus Grendel's mother, that sort of thing. They're expecting that big conflict at the end. But obviously, the game I like running, Call of Cthulhu, the whole point of that game is to not have a direct fight with whatever's at the end of it. The whole point is to try and find a way of winning without.
There is still payoff, because there is still okay. No,
yeah.
We're not equating the payoff to combat. We're equating payoff to struggle, and the struggle of your characters surviving through Call of Cthulhu. That is the payoff. Even though survival might actually be the worst option, because now you're in the loony bin, or you now see the world for what it really is, and you see the people amongst us. My point is, like, the payoff that you're looking for is the satisfaction of the struggle having a resolution, or that there is a satisfactory conclusion to the struggle. Someone shout if you disagree here, but That's my understanding of what we're more or less coming to an agreement to.
I mean, even, and I know what Bear's talking about, where because I played one game of Vampire, and I one-shotted the our big bad.
Yeah.
It was anticlimactic because he did a critical failure. I did a critical success. I took him out. He should have killed me. It felt hollow. That's why I now that said is, when I was bringing up, like, if you have the 4 guards, if the struggle is getting there and then having to get out, at least they feel like, oh, okay, we ran in, now we have to come out in one piece. And that's the struggle. It still feels like it's an adventure. You ran out of the building before it collapses at the last second. You lost maybe 2 characters. Oh, you're going to say something? All right.
No.
Oh, okay. Just so I can come up. That's what I'm talking about. You need that struggle, however it works out, where it's that final payoff. You're like, we survived by the skin of our teeth, or maybe we didn't, but we stopped the great evil, which hey, we saved Paris using Geek's, thing in there. My character died. I'm like, man, I couldn't get away at the last second. But it felt fitting. And I was like, okay, that's what it really comes down to, is it has to feel fitting. Nothing, if anyone ever watched Country for Old Men, if you remember where they were going to have the big climax between the two that were about ready to fight, and then one of them dies just like randomly, that was that felt like such a cheat. As some watched, like, well, you wanted something different. I'm like, I still wanted a climatic fight between the two guys.
I think at the end of that Paris one, you knew that the bad guy was just a man.
Yeah,
he was just a man. So when you rolled the dice, I can't remember who it was who critically hit him and got an impale bonus damage on Cthulhu, which will take out a human pretty much straight away. It's still, you're right, it still felt fitting because it was a heroic moment, because the character performing that action was definitely not going to survive having done it.
Well, we had Grumpy Old Slan with his head, or Percy, going to have his head chopped off, and that was what provided the opening for that. So
yes.
So it's not that we didn't, but it felt like a payoff in that case, and that's what it really comes down to, is you want to feel, especially, even though it was only 3 sessions or 4 sessions when we were playing, if you're building up this especially over half a year or a full year, my God, I want it to actually feel like something more than, you threw the dagger, thanks, you killed him, everyone leaves, goodbye, we're done. You're like, hey, that's the kind of, whenever you play a video game, you pick up the controller, you slam it into the screen or something, and walk away and say it was a terrible game. Doesn't matter that you enjoyed the other 140 hours. That last 1 hour ruined it. Or Game of Thrones. Okay, that last 2 seasons ruined it for me.
Anyway.
I
I will, on this note, have to say I have to pop out. I need my beauty sleep, as I am known
You've been
to
missing
do.
it a lot lately, huh, Sax?
I have indeed.
Work.
Oh, yes.
Take care, boss. Always good to see you.
All right.
Cheers,
Take
Saxis.
care.
And to say, Slan's got to go as well. He's in chat at the moment. He did try and join the stream earlier, but his connection was playing up. If you haven't already done so, Grumpy Old Slan has just set up a channel entitled Grumpy Old Slan. If you search on YouTube for Grumpy Old Slan, you'll find his channel. So subscribe to him.
You can post the link in the chat yourself. Right?
I can do. But
Then you click on it and not be lazy, because people are lazy.
Okay, well, if you two want to talk amongst yourselves while I fumble fingers and thumbs and find the link.
I'll get you the link. I have nothing to say at this moment in time, because I just live in a different world on this front. And it's not that I'm trying to be different or hard. It's just I've said my piece on big bad guys. I said my piece on how I run them, and I've said my piece on what I do. And now you guys are off into the D&D world of, well, this and that and the power. And I don't care about that stuff. That stuff's boring to me. That's why I don't play D&D, because D&D eventually degenerates into a stat game. And that bores the living tar paper out of me. I just posted the link in the private chat for you there, John. You can copy it over and place it in the main chat. And that's why I don't like D&D, and that's why I would never use D&D for something like this, because it just becomes about, well, what power do I have that's more powerful than your power? What can I use as it becomes I'm gonna say something offensive. It becomes Mongoloid chess.
Oh,
Where two people are just yelling at each other. There's no strategy. There's no subtlety. There's no grace to it. It's just, well, this cancels that. Well, this cancels that. Well, this, and it just becomes tiresome. I run games that have skill-based systems or have other types of systems other than class and level, and the players invest in their characters, and I don't have to worry about, oh, well, this thing's too high level for them, or they've attached this, magic thing that they've picked up, and now they're going to defeat the game because it does this, and gives them advantage and plus 12 and whatever else. So as a result, my games aren't focused on the system as much. I had to train one of my home players to stop thinking that way because he wasn't enjoying the games. And once he stopped thinking that way and he got into the character more than the mechanics, he's having a blast now, and he's actually investing and having fun. Whereas before, he just wanted to get to the cool moment where he could use this combo he had put together,
Oh,
So for me, it's a different beast. What games do I play? I play Marvel. I play my own game. I'm playing against the Dark Master right now. I don't play, I run. I play Star Trek. I play skill-based games at the end of the day. And yes, superhero games are stat games depending on which ones you're playing. If you're playing Champions, it's exactly what I just described. If you're playing something that's a little more open and flowing like Marvel superheroes, it's completely not that at the end of the day. It's not working for you. I see it. Does everybody else see that in the chat?
I see a bunch of different ones in there.
Yeah, it's there, dude. You did it. It's successful. You got it.
Yeah.
What it was doing is it was adding, when I was pasting it, it was adding for some reason adding an O at the end of it.
Oh
yeah,
okay.
Slano.
I have no idea.
Slano.
And that was just me pasting the link you put up there. That O kept appearing. So
that's
edited it.
I mean, I'm actually with Bears. I much prefer skill-based systems over level-based systems. Because one is it allows players to face things, that level-based systems are fine if you're trying to balance encounters, but whereas, let's be honest, if I go over and say you see a bunch of warships, and I'm going to use like the last Starfighter, guess what? Wait for all the enemy ships to pass, and then go for the the big ship at the end. Don't try to fight your way through. Which is unfortunately what's happened in a lot of the modern gaming is we'll fight everything until we get to the bad guy. I'm like, no, I want to bypass all that crap. That's the thing I'm afraid of fighting, because all you're doing is wasting resources to get to him, and then by then you're completely exhausted and you can't win.
Well, that's what 5e does to you as well. Like 5e really broke the bank for me on that because. That's you again, John. I know you're allergic to 5e. I apologize. But the reality is it eventually just became, as a GM, your job was to waste the players' resources before they got to the final confrontation so they don't just shit walk over the bad guy. That's not the kind of game I like to run. That's not the kind of game I'm interested in doing. And we said earlier, someone said it doesn't matter for the system. This is where I say system absolutely matters.
Oh, yeah, it does. Of course it does. Of course it does.
Because system imposes play style sometimes.
And I think, in terms of that, certainly more modern D&D is a lot more power based than some of the older, like your OSEs, your basic D&D.
I agree, but your OD&D and all those older games, they're almost, I don't know. Like I like BX. I think BX is my sweet spot for Dungeons and Dragons. You know what I mean? That's if I'm going to play D&D, I'm playing BX. Why? Because I find AD&D too complicated. It's too many moving parts. And I find anything previous to that too minimalist. There aren't enough moving parts. Whereas BX for me hit the perfect sweet spot for me. So,
I always played a hybrid of basic and AD&D, just sort of a mixture of the two.
For me, it's OSE Advanced. To be honest, it's OSE Advanced.
That's a hybrid. That's a hybrid.
And that's what we've been playing in the Saturday mornings and stuff. But well, for me, it's morning. I know it's afternoon for you. But and I agree. What's that?
It's night for me, man. It's 7 p.m.
Oh no, it's 7 a.m.
No.
I'm sorry.
I'm on the East Coast. Where the hell do you think I live? The Philippines?
No. I'm talking about on Saturday mornings. when we play.
Saturday games.
Oh, Saturday mornings. Okay, sorry, my
Yes.
apologies.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, what do you mean it's night? I wake up. You're in North America, aren't you? No, I'm
I thought
sorry.
I was. Now I'm starting to
play-
question
we-
my reality, Omanal.
I know.
We
so
start playing at 2 p.m. UK time. So
Yeah. So
That's 7 a.m. here. Yeah.
So no, I agree with Bear for this. I want them to go through. Now there are times I would like them to waste some of their resources, but I want them to play smart. And the other part is sometimes, and I'm going to mention, because I know some people talk with systems, but we're going to do system agnostic. Anyone that's watched the movie Serenity, where they where they come in and like, oh, this little ship's going to do nothing, and suddenly all the Reavers come in from behind. Now you're like, oh, hey, guess what? I just changed the whole equation now that my little ship can't beat you alone, but now you have to worry about everybody else, and now I can do what I want to accomplish. And that's what I want to reward players for: is play smart.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where the system doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is role playing, and that's the stuff I really agree with. That's the stuff I really like. What I don't like is literally the point that From the Hilt just made, which is, why can't my wizard use a sword? Why can't my cleric use edged weapons? Right? I'm the priest of the goddess of swords, but I have to use a mace? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, those are the types of things a system can impose on a game. Now, yes, of course, as a DM, you can choose to house rule anything you want into the 10th dimension and beyond. But I'm just talking about rules as written.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm.
And in some ways, that's what we have to do, is when we take a system, we have to look at its rules as written. Otherwise, we aren't really playing that game, or we're playing such a modified version that it's going to be different than what anything else is out there. But like you said, with I've seen you play a little bit with your Star Trek. Star Trek isn't my thing, but you have a lot more freedom on what you can do in that than say D&D, where it's like, well, I would never put a first level Star Captain in there. Like, yeah, of course. Or Traveler. Traveler's a good one where if I want a more experienced character, I just have to keep rolling until he gets old.
No, I've seen people try and do level-based Star Trek games, and I'm just like, what the fuck? I'm a level 7 captain? Like, what? That's so stupid. Like, that's just such nonsense.
Well, and if you want to hack it enough, you can do systems. Sort of doesn't matter, but let's be honest. Like Bear said, system encourages certain play styles, and if you're playing against that play style, it's not going to be optimal for it. D&D,
especially when you have a player whose goal is to win.
Yes.
And those players exist, and there's nothing wrong with them. They can be great role players, but if he wants to win, or she wants to win, or they want to win, they may very well be reading those rules to, like, as they say on the internet these days, explained in autistic detail, right? They might be that level about the rules, and then when you change things on them, they get upset because they want to play the rules as they are, but you've done something else, and now they feel cheated because they found a weakness in the system that they exploited. And that's where it comes back to what Eli was saying about the Death Star and having someone change. No, we weren't talking about that with the big bad evil guy. We were talking about the weakness is still there. Even if you change the power level of the big bad guy before the players meet him, if they discover his weakness beforehand and you change it, now you're a cocksucker. Now you're cheating. That is different than adjusting their power level.
I'm going to mention one other thing, though. Like you said, it was a tool. And I went, yes, but you want to make it personalized for the players so they get more invested in it, and that they really do want to fight your big bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want them to go, who the hell cares? We can go over here. Like, but I spend so much time investing. I'm like, yeah, he's boring. We don't care. You don't want that. One is, as a DM, you have to have fun too.
There are aspects of the big on the subject of big bad guys. Yes, the system matters as to how you use your big bad guy, but also, as you say, the players matter. You want to create a big bad guy that the players will find entertaining. Now, his personality has to be something that they want to take out. But also statistically, you're talking about your power gamer types who like their powers. You, if you are trying to make sure that player enjoys the game, you've got to put a few things in there for the big bad guy to make him challenging to that player.
I'm going to mention also, how do you want to put it? I know we've talked about class systems and things like that, where it's really niche protection. Doesn't matter what game. You still want to put the challenges in there so everyone feels like they contributed to the defeat of your bad guy. If you're a computer hacker, then you want to say, oh, I was able to disable the alarms, or I was able to cut off certain doors so he couldn't get reinforcements. And you're like, if you weren't there, we would have all died. That's part of the other part in that too.
Other aspects. I mean, things like the investigation, finding out the weaknesses. If you've got that's reward for players who like puzzles, who like to investigate. So you create aspects of the big bad guy that lean into your player's preferred playstyle. Have I just killed the conversation with that?
No, I was completely agreeing with you. I think that
it's hard to disagree with you, and therefore it's like, yes, we agree, John.
I think that
you become Hypnotoad at that point in time, right? We're just like, all hail Hypnotoad.
Yeah.
I'm going to mention, I don't know if you guys talked about this. What are some of your favorite villain bad guys? I don't care for literature or otherwise.
Me as the GM, I am my favorite villain bad guy. No, guys, I got to bounce. I got to start getting ready for my stream that's coming up at 8:00. So thanks for having me on. It was nice to be here. It's always fun to argue, but we don't argue enough here, and that's the problem. As Barry Champlain once said, nothing more boring than people who agree with you, right? So we all agree with each other. I feel bad for the guys watching. They must be like, oh, these guys suck.
But I mean, if you want a good argument, think of a topic that where we disagree. And
I got my own shows to worry about, man. I'm not here to make your show for you. Jeez.
Well, normally we do disagree enough, and that's why he's doing his middle fingers. The
only thing you and I disagree on, Omanal, is how much you need to stop talking. No, I'm kidding. All right, that was a joke. Bless you. All right, peace, love, Geek guys. I'll see y'all later. Thanks for having me on. Everybody in the chat, love you, kiss you. I don't know, touch you inappropriately.
I have just realized that your clocks haven't moved yet, have they?
That is correct. That's why I was kind of surprised. Now, that to be said, this is my bad feeling, which is I wanted to watch them talk about how Hasbro was going to possibly go bankrupt. So I was listening to that at the beginning. So that's why I came in later on your stream.
I should have reacted to that and started the stream at 8:00 my time, which would have been the same time for you lot over there, because obviously our clocks moved last weekend. So I've started it at 9:00 my time, which is actually an hour shifted compared to you lot now.
Well, you know what? You should have kept it the same time. Because I'll be honest, it's easier for us because a lot of us get off work around 4 or 5. For us to come in a little bit later than 3:00, that's I get off at 4, so a lot of times I don't jump in the stream until I get off, and you're already an hour in.
So a lot of you will be expecting me to say it's pumpkin hour now, won't you? But it's not, because it's 11 here at the moment because the clocks have moved.
Well, I was trying to figure out if I want to go swimming today or not, because that water's cold. So, but no,
I'm just trying to think of my. We have an Eli. We have an Eli.
Cool. See?
He's lurking in the background. You're muted.
Yep, there you go.
Gone.
Yeah.
What?
you know what? As much as Bear makes fun of me, then he's like, "Get on it." You get when I was talking to him on the stream, he's like, "Get on here." It's like, oh,
yeah.
No, it's. I think some of it is who are like some great villains in there, and what makes them great. That's.
I was trying to think of my favorite villains in it, because I've run a lot of pre-written adventures. And villains I've really enjoyed playing. The obvious one is the one I always mention, that vampire from Horror on the Orient Express. And I want to run Horror on the Orient Express on the Discord channel at some point, and it gives me an opportunity to play him again.
I thought you did, but or did you get?
I run the prequels.
Oh, okay. I thought you'd run like the first part of the adventure or something.
No, I ran the 30 years beforehand.
Okay.
One. So, yes. Yes, so I think he's probably my favourite of all the villains I've portrayed at various points. I did enjoy playing the bad lady in the Cthulhu adventure I wrote. But most of you haven't played that. So Manfred has. Manfred Meta. Anyway,
No,
Eli.
I don't actually use a lot of big bad evil guys in my games. Part of that is because I kind of suck at them, and also my campaigns tend to be less villain based and more like situationally based, because I tend to run more realistic worlds. Like the king may seem like the problem, but the problem is not just the king.
Yeah.
I mean, right now I'm really struggling because I've got like this giant evil dragon as a villain in my game, and I'm like, am I really playing this up right? You know.
Yeah.
But the thing she's doing in the background is not directly affecting the party. She's doing her thing. She's got her plot going on, and their whole adventure was kind of kicked into gear by a big ass red dragon showing up at their village and saying, "You need to stop this shit because I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to put myself in danger. But if you don't, I'm going to burn your village."
I mean, not that I have the capability.
So he's not really the big bad evil guy. He is a big bad evil guy because he's an ancient red dragon. But
well, but you know what? That's okay. I mean, I kind of like the ones that are the multi-dimensional, highly intelligent, highly powerful. But they're going through. And it's like sometimes I'll help the party, and sometimes I'll work against them. And then it's they're an adversary, but maybe not necessarily one they want to kill. Just ones they want to stop. The typical, how do I want to say it? Your Lex Luthor equivalent for Superman. Not that you want to kill him, but you want to stop him from doing his evil. But every so often he'll help you out if it goes against his, ultimate goal.
So who is it? General Nut wants me to explain the mimetic ogre, the term that I coined earlier in the chat. Mimetic's probably not the best word, but it's catchy, thanks to Terminator 2. But it's basically I was equating it to the quantum ogre. We all, hopefully everybody knows what the quantum ogre is, but the mimetic ogre is, rather than an encounter that changes place, it's an encounter that changes the nature of the encounter to adapt to its surroundings. It's not exactly the right use of the word mimetic, but neither was the T-1000. So, so there you go, because they asked.
Well, Manfred's saying apparently I play snotty little girls better than the big bad woman in that adventure. Okay, fair enough. They weren't bad then.
Here's what it goes. But I have a nice wife, but I remember my a little mouthy, for your daughter. It's like, oh, okay, I can do that. I can play a no, it's
Omanel keeps getting swallowed by the time stream.
I have tried playing with my router and all sorts of crap, so I don't know what's going on, because it used to be pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, you never had much of a problem in the past, so
yeah. So, but I've tried rebooting it. I've tried resetting it. I've tried changing settings in there. Nothing seems to work. So sorry about that.
No, it's not a problem. As far as like with the way I run my campaigns, so I guess technically there's a big bad evil guy in that, there's usually a system or some sort of institution or power base that needs to be taken care of or thwarted or circumvented. I find that is also a lot easier to flex to fit the game, because an organization, a government, an institution has a wider range of resources than a singular BBEG. And sure, you killed the Archduke. All right, well, there's 20 other dukes and a baron and a and a cardinal, and
You
That-
you're having to
that-
fight
that-
against the whole system. Rather
That
than
was
just-
partly my point in that campaign I was explaining earlier about the dragons and stuff, in that the dragons themselves were bound not to directly fight the mortals, but they were manipulating them. So the idea was that that blue dragon was manipulating the people for its own gain.
yeah. In my current campaign, where I was mentioning with the dragon stuff too, the party really had to take stock and go, okay, what could possibly be so bad that this really powerful dragon isn't taking care of it itself? And if so, then how are we supposed to be able to take care of it? So they've gone on this whole other side quest, which I had no idea that they were going to go on and have had to adapt to completely. But yeah, I mean, they did find out ultimately what was going on, and that's that this super powerful white dragon is using some sort of orb of dragon kind to capture other dragons, to sacrifice them all to become basically an avatar of Tiamat. So she's going to basically sacrifice one of each of the chromatic dragons, and she's going for the most powerful she can. So they're like, we can't take that on. So they're on this quest to try and get more power, and that's fine. The dragon will remain just as powerful, and if they can find a way to take her out, that is more satisfying to me as a GM. Also, is to have my players figure out a way to beat the enemy and the or even the opposition or the situation that I set forth, rather than having to build it, pad it up to make it seem like. But again, that's play style. And I may have come across more argumentative in the comments with Bear than I meant to, because that's comments. You can't really get into super detail. But it really comes down to play style. For him, it's very likely, and a lot of people, it's like if you get to the end and the big bad evil guy is kind of a wet blanket, you're like, well, okay. Well, that's part of that goes down to how he's played in the end anyways. Even if the players do outpower him, you can still have a memorable moment there, because you can ham it up and the guy could be up there doing his big old monologue, you finally found me, but you're never going to die. And then all of a sudden they bazot him and he's like, his robe flutters to the ground.
Well,
his ring tinks across the flagstones.
Do you know much about? I mean, the one I altered, for example, was the one at the bottom of the Lost City. I don't know how well you know that module.
Oh, it's one of my favorite modules. Yeah.
So that was my modification of Zargon at the bottom of the Lost City, and he's in a big pit of slime when you encounter him, and his weakness, which is in the adventure, is his horn. You've got to target the horn, otherwise he's incredibly difficult. Most of the changes I made were related to his pit of slime and the environment in which they would be fighting him. So I didn't change him. I had him at the sort of monster which would be a really tough challenge for a fully rested party around level 6. That was how he was. But what I did is I made the environment a lot more difficult. I gave him things like the ability to make the ground thick slime and thus very difficult to get through. And he could summon a black pudding on top of the party to fight for him.
Okay.
Things like that. Things to make the combat itself much hairier. So that's how I took some attacks away from him when I realized I'd overstatted him on certain things. I wanted the environment to be the real deciding factor there, because they had learned that they'd got to get to his horn. They'd got to get his horn and take that to defeat him.
Okay.
But the challenge was getting past black puddings and green slimes that are being thrown at them and this whole pit. It was.
I'm going to bring up something, because everyone talks about Big Bad as if it's super powerful, but sometimes it's the stupid bureaucrat, which with real life, that you can get your revenge on, who you cannot directly attack. And I'm going to mention this is
Robin Hood,
what's the spaceship harbor master who gives your characters hell every time he comes in there, and he's completely corrupt, and he takes all the, he takes the money, he makes sure you don't get things, and the players hate him, but they can't do anything. And finally, when they're able to expose him and watch him get let off in chains, do they feel that real satisfaction of striking it back to the man? Not everything has to be this super powerful thing. It's just that one annoyance they can't get rid of.
You can even play that in something that they absolutely can't remove. The big bad evil guy in a military type campaign could be their commander.
Oh, exactly.
He's like, he doesn't, he's always downplay, he's not giving us the support we need. He's always, sending us on these missions where he doesn't think it through because he's full of crap. And, maybe at the very end they might be able to get him out of position, but or watch happily as the bridge of the space cruiser, whatever, goes up in flames because, he was too bold in his attack.
Well, something as simple as, we found out he was cheating on his wife. So we sent her messages, and we found out that he was cheating over here just enough that they can feel that they struck back without necessarily having to kill him. But like you said, he's now removed after you've, what was it? Shawshank Redemption at the end, where, that's sometimes you can just, that's your little stab, at the end. Screw you, I'm taking you down with.
A good fantasy example of, that kind of weakling leader who has more powerful, you could do the weakling leader who has more powerful people at his disposal is, Prince John in Robin Hood. He's almost always played up as kind of poncy and, kind of dysfunctional.
Yeah.
He's got political power. I mean, he can wave a hand and, you could be executed, but all of his, the sheriff and, Guy of Gisborne and all that, they're his, they're his thugs, his real power.
And in some cases, that, like you said, the Prince John isn't necessarily the one that the players are going against. It's the Sheriff of Nottingham. That's their bad guy. And the other one's like, well, you know what? We can stay far enough away from him, and we don't worry about him. But yeah, I mean, those are they're great stories that you can get in there. But man, when you get players where they just hate, the character you love to hate, that's when you really know you've done a good job.
Let's also not forget the false BBEG, where you have the character who appears to be the big bad evil guy, let's say a king again, but the king is going based on bad intel that he's getting from his cabinet, and maybe it's his advisor. Good example would be the Three Musketeers, where the cardinal himself is the big bad evil guy, not the king, even though he's acting on the king's behalf and likes to hide behind that authority, or the church's authority. That's a good way to play it too.
Or worm tongue for Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It's of course the problem that you have there is, the players are not Gandalf and stuff. It's the, you're like, what, Eodred or whatever it is, where it's like, we have to do something. No, we aren't going to do this. You're like, oh.
I mean, they could be. I mean, that's all up to your players. I mean, your players could be very well, figuring it out, and that's okay, because then that gives them a direction to go. If you suddenly realize that the king is just some sort of idiot who, or even maybe intelligent, he's just sheltered. A lot of cases, like with a lot of the Musketeers stories, they often play the king up as being very sheltered from what's really going on, and and therefore all the real big bads get away with everything.
I've just run a Call of Cthulhu adventure, which has got a wonderful misdirect in it, but I don't want to reveal. I don't want to talk about it. I'm holding off reviewing it because I want to run it on the channel at some point for people. I so want to review it because I so want to talk about it because it was a lot of fun. But I want to run it. I want to run it again. I don't want to spoil it for people.
I mean, if you think about it, Call of Cthulhu, you're often never going to deal with technically the big bad.
No.
Because he's way out of your league.
Well, and usually, to be fair on this, he just doesn't care. I mean, technically, Cthulhu doesn't care. It's like,
Yeah, he's not really a big bad evil guy. He's a
Yeah.
big bad indifferent guy.
yeah. You know, it's like, well, he'll squash you if you're there. He won't squash you. Yeah, it's kind of like, well, we're going to summon him. It's like it's always the cult leader that's the real evil in that.
Well, and it's funny if you think about it. So often those cults are just they're assuming some sort of end result, some sort of reward, some sort of treasure, just because I often feel like the cultists in the Cthulhu world understand enough of the mythos to play with the mythos, but they're often functioning under very Abrahamic belief systems of that, service and reward mentality. And so that kind of bleeds in with they're like, we found a god, and if we serve this god, he's going to give us what we want. So we have to make him come around and come alive, and it'll be all great for us. Well, Cthulhu's like, all right.
I'm hungry.
I can't really. Cthulhu's just looking at the two pictures. They're the same. They're the same picture. It's like,
well, but that's the other part too. Is you're at the end. They're doing the cultist. It suddenly comes up. Your demon or whatever comes out. They're like, we're going to get ready to fight it, and then you do something to dispel him. And the temple starts crashing around, everything else. It's that thrill and going, well, the demon really didn't play any effect onto you as the players, because it was always the cultist leader that was your big bad guy as far as you're concerned.
How often have we seen it in movies and stuff too, movies and even books and then like video games, where the ritual occurs and the first one to get munched is the high priest.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the really bad Conan the Destroyer movie, where at the end they summon the god and he like immediately gores the priest.
Well, there's that. I mean,
which I can't help but think that there's a correlation between Dagoth and Conan the Destroyer and the story that it's based on and Zargon.
Oh, I think
because they both have the horn vulnerability.
I agree. Well, you know what though is what was it? The Temple of the Lost City came out before. So they've just probably stole that one,
They're probably pulling from the same source literature, because I'm pretty sure Conan the Destroyer is based on one of the Conan stories.
Yeah, they're all pretty similar.
Now, when I say Conan stories, it may not even be a literary one. It could be one from the graphic novels, the comics.
Oh yeah,
Moldvay was always he's pulling a lot of his stuff from that sort of literature, wasn't he?
Moldvay was very sword and sorcery.
Yeah.
Or sword and sorcery. Whereas Zeb Cook was very Lost World, and that's why he gave us, Isle of Dread. So,
well,
and was clearly traumatized by flying monkeys as a child.
And talking spiders.
Well, because he has the Azerians in Star Frontiers, which is a game he wrote, he contributed heavily to, and then he has the Thanaton. So flying monkeys clearly traumatized him. But
Daniel, the link is in the Discord, in the same place as it always is.
I'm going to also bring up, not that anyone's necessarily played it, but Enemy in Shadows for Warhammer. That's coming in these same things where you're trying to figure out what's going on, and it's. John, you would probably really enjoy it.
It's funny you bring that up. I wanted to mention this when I talked to you sometime. So my buddy from back home came to visit last week, last week actually, and he's playing with this one British expat is in his game group back home now, and the guy has been playing in the same Warhammer Fantasy roleplay campaign for like 20 years.
Oh wow!
One campaign running for 20 years.
I mean, I envy those players, but the other part is a lot of times I kind of like, let's be honest. I'm an RPG whore. It's like, oh, let me go try this game, and let me go try this game.
You have gamer ADHD, yes.
Sort of.
And some people are like that. They'll play that same game. Like I met a guy here in St. Louis, one of my brother's gaming buddies, who has been in the same second edition game for 17 years. I'm like, a campaign that runs for 17 years straight. Oh my God, the dream, right? But I, as a GM, I'd be like, can we play something else? For the love of God, can we play something else?
Well, for me, I don't mind if we switch back and forth or we have multiple games. But part of this goes, and this is the maybe we'll be lucky if we get older and they send us to old folks' homes. That then, if we're gonna be stuck there, it's like, well, what else can we do? Well, we can all play role-playing games. It's like, well, did the character die or did the player die? You're like, no, the player died from yesterday. It was okay. But that's okay. We got fresh blood in. He's only 67.
Yeah, it was just an aside because I know you talk about Warhammer Fantasy roleplay a lot, and it was like I was just amazed. I'm like, that's crazy. Of course, he's also a British gamer who he's heavily invested in all of the Games Workshop games.
Well, so. I mean, for me, is I like to change things up. It's just like trying to watch only one TV show. Like, look, I'd love to play multiple games if I could do so. It's hard to get. The problem is getting enough for just one game, let alone trying to do 3 or 4. Online has been great for that, and sometimes this is why.
Well, it's why I have a hard time getting Ben out of shape over 5e. I mean, my only problem with 5e right now is it's the only thing I can get to play.
Yeah,
because while I will play a deep ass video game, I'll also play some cheesy ass button masher. And while I will watch some really heavy horror movie, I might also do what my wife and I did last night on Halloween and watch a Norwegian werewolf flick.
Well, and that's what it is. I want to have
you have different flavors and variety. I'm like, Star Frontiers is cool, but I also like Star Wars and Star Trek. Yeah,
Well, and Geek with his OSE games are perfect. They're drop in, drop out. Like I don't feel any obligation. I have to be there every week.
Totally off topic, but I guess I get it. Yeah.
No. But I mean, like I'm in a GURPS game. I don't really enjoy GURPS as a system, but I'm there, and I'm like, okay, we're doing this. But with John's, if I feel like it, I wake up, I'm like, you know what? I want to take a nap, or I want to do something today. I don't feel like I'm obligated to be there. And then I come in and like, oh, okay. Another character died. Make another one. And since enough people are dying or enough characters are dying, I don't really feel like I'm losing that much. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, I was thrilled because, Jim Cody started an OSE game and I was able to get into that. We've only managed one session so far, but it's still alive technically.
Well, and I think that's part of it is when you have a big enough player group and it's not reliant on the story aspect, I think that makes a big difference. Because if you're, when we're talking about it, and I think it's player expectations rather than
my current campaign is exactly that. Yeah. We've missed so many sessions because the story, and it's not even, it's a plot.
Yeah.
Because the story is clearly being built by the players because I did not try to find the lost temple of Bahamut to try and talk to the dragon god on my list for where this adventure was going to go or where this campaign was going to go, but they've done it. And that was actually a really fun bit of role playing. But at the same time, if I've only got 2 people, I can't play that game.
Yeah.
Because of the power level of that game at this point is just to a point where, unless I start, downplaying my encounters, which the problem with that is if you've been building in power level throughout the game and then suddenly things start getting weaker, it's clear that the GM's nerfing the encounters to fit the party. So
that's a bit of an issue with 5e is that it does.
It's impossible to nail down the power level in 5e, period.
Yes,
even with the party's full strength, I'm like, okay, well, they're, all 8th level. They should be able to take, collectively, this is the challenge rating that they should go for. And even if I tweak it for my understanding of challenge rating versus what challenge rating says, which is wrong, they still cakewalk through there. Now, admittedly, that could come down to me as a GM and maybe I'm just not a big enough of a dick.
So Eli, it's not just you. My friend talks about that is with a bunch of 8th level characters. He puts in a CR15. They'll take out CR15 monsters if he's not careful.
Yep.
But
Which
if
brings
you
it back to the big bad evil guy problem. Like in 5e, it's near impossible to have a big bad evil guy, because when they went on that Orcus Temple, campaign arc in my game, they got in, they fought the massive mob of undead, because God of the Undead, right?
Mhm.
And then they fought like 4 super powerful undead, and then they fought the high priest avatar of Orcus who was in the temple back to back. And by challenge rating, each of those encounters was deadly for that full strength party. Back to back to back. No rest period, nothing. Basically, horde of undead comes in, smacks it. The powerful undead guardians swoop in, dead. Bad guy comes in. I guarantee you, if I would have put all of that in one fight against them by 5e, with characters being about like 6th level where they were, they probably would have got through that encounter, maybe having lost a player or a character.
So, I mean, my friend finds it's all or nothing. It's either they win it, or it goes so badly that all of a sudden it's like a TPK. And instead of, and that was his complaint. And I think that's the other problem I have a little bit with 5e. And sorry, we're going to go off on this on, but the other problem is that there are too many. I'm not going to necessarily say players, but there are enough channels on YouTube telling you on how to min-max do the maximum damage that it doesn't make it fun for really anybody.
You don't even need that, though. There are so many variables that as a DM, you really cannot account for them unless you're some sort of savant, with like, this absolutely encyclopedic memory for the game and a tactical brain that could beat, Russian chess computers.
I'm going to disagree with General Nut here. I hate games where GM increases or decreases threat level. And I'm going to be a little bit different on that. I don't know what the threat level is as a player, so I don't know if they're increasing or decreasing it anyway.
That was the concession I made to Bear's comment, and the whole thing earlier is like, if the GM is doing his job right, the players will really never know. I do find that you have to play that really carefully, because you can end up cheesing your players. And as a GM, my taste, I am not gonna feel okay doing that. I'm one of those GMs, like I mentioned a second ago, I may not be a big enough dick, because I'm kind of a cheerleader for my players when it comes to playing. I like to see them succeed and have fun. It's not that I don't go against them with tough enemies. I don't like, and unfortunately this is turning into a 5th edition rant, but one of the biggest problems with 5th edition is that it really makes me feel like I have to become adversarial with my players, as opposed to the game just being tough.
I want to be the biggest advocate for the players. I do. I mean, I know things can go sideways, but I want to give them a chance to get out. I want to give them a chance. Just like my joke has always been, I'd much rather cut off a character's hand because Raised Dead's 5th level and Regeneration 7th. But guess what? Your character hasn't died. I mean, it just depends on what's in there, and then let them make the choice. I'm not saying you can't. I want them to suffer, but I don't want them to be punished for doing things that are right. And what I mean by suffers, I want them to really be challenged and feel like they got out with the skin of their teeth. Now, if they play stupid, you know what? You deserve to die. But I don't want to necessarily always be dictated by the dice rolls that also say, hey, you're going to be completely wiped out. That's
the other side of things like that is, I mean, Omen Owl the One-Handed is a name that brings a story with it.
Well, yeah,
Omen Owl the Burnt Crisp.
I've said it before. How many players spend hours around a snack table going on about the cakewalk adventures they went on?
No.
It's always about the things. To heretics, the heretics comment here. I'm curious what I mean. Rules as written is not the problem, because playing raw just means you're playing the rules. It has nothing to do with whether or not, because I mean, I can stack an encounter against the players by raw. So
the other point is, and I think people forget about this, is you as a DM can always set up enough adversaries in there that they're going to die 100%.
Yeah,
That's not your job. Your job is to challenge the players. Now, sometimes you can give them a challenge that they can't technically overcome, at which point they should run away. But I don't want to. How do I want to say
I can
that?
literally have the dungeon fall on them.
Yeah.
If I wanted to. All right, dungeon collapses. You're all dead.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, or yeah, and that doesn't make it fun for me. It doesn't make it fun for them. It's the challenge that really excites them, and the interesting characters they meet, the interesting fights, the one riddle, the trap that's, you know. To be fair, I just supported Grimtooth's traps, which I'm going to modify in some way at some point. Just to warn you, Geek.
You have to, because a lot of them are a little cheesy.
Well,
I have PDFs of the originals, but
well, I'm not going to try killing the players, but I will make it like less lethal, but suck. You know, that kind of thing, which is like, but I like riddles. I know some people hate them, but it's like, look, I'll give you a chance to get by them, but I want, you know, like you're talking about the 3 different ways to get the same result. Look, you can fight your way through the encounter. You can think your way through the encounter. You can sneak your way past the encounter. That's
there's a fourth. You can just run away.
Yeah, well, yeah. well, I
or does that count as part of thinking?
Well, I mean, to go forward past this obstacle. Running away just means I avoid said obstacle, which is okay too. But
oh yeah, I mean, run away, go and pay somebody else to do it. There you go. Yeah,
but I think certain systems do that. It's just like, you know, if you're going to go play Alien, if you bring aliens in every situation, you're not going to have characters and you're not going to have players for very long. The players are just going to quit out of frustration.
Especially if you're playing space truckers, if you're not playing Marines, because I mean, the fact of the matter is Ripley is the only one who made it out of the first movie, and she only did so by the skin of her teeth. I mean, literally down to, you know, that last scene. If you break it down as an RPG session, you know, she's in the shuttle, she's in her underpants, you know, that she picks up that the creature is breathing. She backs away, and you got your player going, all right, so can I sneak back to the spacesuits and slowly start to get into one? You know, that's a player thinking his way through that final encounter, because there's no way that Ripley one-on-one with the xenomorph in her tighty whities is gonna beat the alien. You know, she's not going to do it. And you're right. If you were to throw xenomorphs into a game, into like every game, first of all, it just gets really boring.
Yeah.
But you know, your players, you know, they're going to get fed up because most of them are going to die. Now, if you're just playing cinematics, that's fine, because cinematics are basically just doing back-to-back, Tomb of Horrors.
Well,
it's like, you know, because the whole idea is to have a very lethal, all-out, full-on scenario.
But what's cool about the cinematics, at least, you know, having the modules, is they're intended for 3 sessions. You're not really supposed to die until the last session. At which point, don't get me wrong, it's still lethal, but the idea is that you ramp it up slowly. So guess what? The players are, you know, very similar with the old Geek when we were playing Realm of Terror. Our sessions were still generally come out to about 3. I think the same thing with Forget Me Not. They still come out to about 3 sessions. You don't want to kill off all of the characters within the first session. Like, oh, one is DM. I feel unsatisfied. Great. I bought a module and we didn't even get to play through like anything. The players feel like, well, this sucks. We'd rather do something else now. But I kind of want them to have that tension ramp up, the personal interactions, the personal, because they give you different cards and the cards are different. I think they've done a good job with that. But I think those are the things that come into it. Is you want to make your big bad interesting, and you want to make it a challenge. And you don't even have to show it all the time. Just the fact that they know it's in the background helps as well until the very end.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Call of Cthulhu adventures that work well over that sort of 3-session idea. An intro, a delving around, the investigation, main bulk of it being the mid-session, and the build up to General Nuts just brought up Forget Me Not.
Yeah.
The intro was people was them finding out who they were. The second session was pretty much learning what's going on, and the third session is okay, what the hell are we going to do about it?
Yeah, and you and I have talked about this, John, where like sometimes in a Call of Cthulhu scenario, the best victory you're going to get is just whatever you can manage. It may not be a perfect victory. It may not even be a victory. Maybe you just survived.
And that's a victory unto itself sometimes.
Yeah, maybe all you've done is stave off evil for another cycle of 100 years.
And I'm okay with that one too. But
and that's when you have the next session be 100 years later.
well, that's what he did with Orient on the Orient Express.
Well, yeah, if you with those historical time frames, I mean, you could literally I was one of the I can't remember the name of the channel, but he does a lot of really good game scenario reviews, and he makes a ton of free to download scenarios that are often written for multiple systems. And he did a Call of Cthulhu scenario that takes place during the the Paleolithic,
and
it's literally primitive humans out there dealing with something Lovecraftian.
Well, some of it is just, and when we say big bad, sometimes it can be a group, like you were talking earlier with a group. But if you have a tribe of hobgoblins, that can be your big bad overall, and not just the individual hobgoblin leader.
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes what people forget is
it doesn't always have to be one individual. No, it can be a cult, an organization, a hive of creatures. So
no, and I don't know what Heretic is necessarily saying in there about. I haven't really read everything he's going in there, but when you play,
he's referring to the whole Raw versus cheerleader thing that I was, because somehow is what I'm gleaning.
Oh, okay.
I mean, really, just to address it. I mean, so I know the rules. There is a ton of stuff in the game that is out there, way too much for me to keep straight all the time. I'm not going to stop the game to look up every little piddly rule. And I'm also not going to... my encounters make sense when I run them. I run my games with a very high level of verisimilitude. And so my encounters make sense. And so, yes, you can rules as written. You can apply the rules to the game. You can do all of that. But at the same time, trying to phrase this correctly, I'm not going to go out of my way to find ways to counter every last little thing my party has. I'm not going to build encounters like, this guy has this ability, but if I put this monster in, or if they're in a lava-filled cavern fighting a monster, there's going to be lava-filled cavern things that happen. And that is what's going to happen. That might complicate things, true. It might be too loud, and so concentration DCs are a little higher, in 5th edition, because all the distraction, the heat, and the noise. There might be random bursts of lava splattering everywhere. There could be rock falling.
I think the key is that the rules are a framework, and you utilize that framework to do what you want, but you can tinker around the edges.
I'm going to go for this much, which is I'm not going to specifically build NPCs just to beat the party, which is what I think Eli's talking about. Is yes, and if you listen to stuff online, well, this is how you min-max this character, and you dip into this class, and you dip into that class, and once you start doing that, it's like, well, one is it doesn't feel natural for said character, and then number two is, and I think this is the problem that we have with 5e. There are so many interactions, you probably don't realize all those different interactions until you're actually confronted with them. And it's
let's not even get down to the fact that the monsters written in the monster manual are way underpowered for the classes that came out in later books.
Mm-hmm.
because they've had so much power creep. And just gonna say it verbally because I've typed it into the text here a couple times. Heretic. There's no offense taken, but it
No.
is a good point for discussion, and so we're
Yeah.
discussing it.
Well, I'm going to bring up one other thing, which is he said with sticking with the rules. Don't let the rules get in the way of the game, which sounds funny, but so many, again, we talk about sometimes the autistic mentality of, but I have to do this. You're just like, look, it makes more sense if I just say X. Okay, stop trying to roll for everything. You fall off the ship and you're swimming, and the ship sails goodbye. Okay, now you make it to an island, and now you're on a deserted island.
That's the benefit of
Yeah.
that's the benefit of running a campaign with a high level of verisimilitude, though, because if your world constantly makes sense, not necessarily realistic, but makes sense, then when you make a makes sense judgment against your players and decide that you just fall off the ship, they have nothing to say.
Quite.
Because, well, they shouldn't have anything to say because there's always going to be that player. But but the thing is that if you have had your world and the monsters playing by the rules of the world, they can't fault you for having the players, the characters, play by the rules of the world. Gravity still works. Centrifugal force is a thing. Pitch and yaw is a thing.
Fire still burns, water's still wet, and beer still gets you drunk.
Yeah, but because we don't want to go down the rabbit hole of realism because then your dragons can't fly, your giants crumble under their own weight. Yeah.
Well, I got into an argument, which never get an argument over the internet is what it really comes down to. But for combat, where I said, look, I don't want to have to this. I like rules like system. He says, oh, you just like role playing. You like to LARP instead of playing the game. No, I still like dice rolling. I still enjoy some of the aspects to it. I just don't want, he was referring to Pathfinder. I just don't want to have to remember 600 pages of rules because guess what? I've got like 100 different RPGs. Guess which ones that are easiest for me to play? The ones I don't have to remember everything about and all their weird interactions.
7th edition Call of Cthulhu is actually, if you really get down to it, a surprisingly rules light game.
I found working with Geek, it's like, okay, Geek, what do we do? Oh, it's this, it's that. Okay, I'm good.
I specifically 7th edition because they've nuanced it so well that it all works on kind of a unified system. Because if you go back an edition, back to 6th, then that stupid, what do they call it?
The resistances table.
The resistances table was bullshit. And then you had like AD&D level stats where you were running in that kind of like 4 to 19 kind of range of stats, and then everything else was percentages. Now all of your stats are also percentages, and but the cool thing is they engineered it to where everything from previous editions is fully compatible because all you have to do is multiply by 5, and you can do that on the fly. So you don't even have to rewrite a module. You just have to look at it and go math. And
I think part of it just comes down to as I get older, I'm not looking for all the crunch. I do agree with Bears. I like a little bit of crunch, so I feel like I can do some cool things in there and just being. But I don't want it so crunchy that that's where Pathfinder comes in. Where if I can do this, and if I can do this, and then I can do this, and I said, look, I don't want to have to remember all that. And as a DM, the problem is you don't have to remember one character's stuff. You have to remember them all.
So there's a statement I have often made, and that is that editions don't actually matter. Ultimately, they don't matter. I mean, system matters because it does inform game system. Bear is right in that regard. But as far as the fun I have had in D&D, let's just say D&D, I've literally played the same adventures and the same sort of fun, had the same enjoyment, plus or minus a bit, but that could come down to individual games, regardless. The thing is, that also is stating that I don't need all the hoi polloi of 5e and all of its 8 bazillion things, or God forbid 3rd edition, to be able to have fun. Because back in BX, we would have characters who were just as characterful because we had a lighter core system, and if something came up, the DM could insert a rule on the fly or make a ruling and then write it down in his little book of house rules.
And
And it was good because you didn't have to worry about like, did this thing I just did completely unravel the fabric of the game?
it's easy for DMs to create new monsters and big bad enemies because that system is so simple.
also
You can
easy
just
to-
bolt on a few bits and pieces, and there you go.
It's also easy to give characters new abilities.
Yeah.
So let's say you're playing BX and your party meets a minor powerful creature, and one of them wants to enter into a pact with it to gain some extra power. Now, nowadays, that would be playing a warlock. But back then, as a DM, I could go, okay, you're going to get 25% magic resistance, you can now cast magic missile 3 times a day, or something like that. I could cook it up, and he's still going to have that specialness.
But now, a piece of your soul has gone, and now
we're going to play it out, and it's going to develop. But you could still have that character.
I'm going to mention one other thing, because this was part of the argument I got into where the guy's like, well, you can't just do this. If you house rule it, you're not playing the game anymore. I said, what the hell are you talking about?
Go tell that to Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson.
Well, no. This is my point.
I just want to dive in. I just want to dive in because General Nut here is trying to bribe Mage's Musings for this weekend.
Oh, okay. When's Claire?
Having chatted with Mage a few times, your best form of bribery is to bring a free and single and low maintenance tall blonde model.
I will warn you though about bribing GMs. I have imprisoned a player's character for trying to bribe me.
I'm going to bring up this one other thing that we're talking about for rules is written. I was arguing with the guys like, well, if you change the rules, you're not playing the same game. I said, oh, really? I said, I play like the OSC. Gingerbeard plays different than Istiltar, which plays different than, they all play, or was that Gene Splat Records? Anyway, they all play differently. You play differently. And they said, well, sometimes we'll use this house rule. We'll use this house rule. Guess what? I don't feel like I'm playing a different game. I'm like, oh, okay. Even with the same characters, I just say, oh, okay. If I play this character, he'll die in Gingerbeard's game. But if I play in Istiltar's, I might survive if he goes to 0 hit points. Guess what? Still playing the same game because the same core is still there. And it's easy to do. I don't understand why these people all act like to change one rule is to completely unravel the whole system.
I don't get that mentality because it's never been in the rules. In fact, it's been stated very clearly in multiple editions that you should make it your own.
Yes.
And it is well documented that the old hats, that's how they played it. Many of the things that we consider hard-coded into the game were because somebody at the table had an idea and wanted to do something new. You're a cleric? There's a vampire we need to take care of. I have this class.
Well, I'm going to bring up
Melf and his acid arrow spell and all of that.
I'm going to bring up the other part that goes into the whole thing, which is BX is different than first edition AD&D, but they're nearly compatible. Look at the cleric. The cleric does not get a spell until 2nd level in BX. Cleric in first edition usually has 3, effectively.
Yes.
They do have higher stats. Only because I'm going to say if you're rolling 46 rearrange,
a good chunk of that, honestly, though, is that because BX has fewer spells too.
It does, but
so you have to kind of spread the peanut butter a little thinner in BX because otherwise, I've got all the spells by 3rd level.
On a slightly different tangent, you know those named spells? They all tell us something about those characters' experiences and
those
personality.
Were made by the players.
Yeah.
Melf had a nasty encounter with trolls, clearly. Hence, acid arrow.
His minute meteors was because he wanted something that didn't blow up like a fireball. That's the story behind minute meteors.
Tensor was lazy.
Yeah, well,
Tensor
Tensor was
floating
thinking, he's like, we've gone into all these dungeons and we can't get this treasure out. Can I make something to, you know?
He just couldn't be asked carrying a sack. That's what it is.
And then then Big B is just an HR problem. Because he's way too handsy.
Wait,
But
wait. Tensor is Wally and Dilbert. That's.
But yeah, I mean, all of those named spells. You think about it though; those were very likely created by those players
Yeah.
as they played the game, because they saw things that needed to be done, and because of that, they got the spells named after their characters, and they got written into the history of the game forever and forever. And we just take it for granted that those spells have always been there. But there was a time where, like I said, the old hats were sitting there making shit up. They were house ruling the game.
Well, I'm going to break.
Leoman didn't like being interrupted. Mordenkainen liked hiding things away.
Lehman just wanted to sleep.
I'm gonna bring this up too, which is, if you have to look at the, this is what people don't do. You look at the evolution. It was the white, which was what, chainmail, and then they did the white box. From the white box, they had a few additions. They said, oh, you know what? We're gonna bring out the basic, and then we're also gonna bring out the advanced. They had time to build everything up, and just like Geek's going through these old dungeon, these old Dragon magazines. They, but this is why I think the first edition Dungeon Masters guy is so great. Gygax explains a lot of why he did certain rulings.
It's a huge set of essays on the logic of the game. And speaking of Dragon magazines, I did some more rearranging of my basement because I got some more shelving and stuff down here. And I'm going through and I'm like moving boxes. I'm like, oh, here's another box of comics. No, this is all Dragon magazines. Oh, here's another box, more Dragon magazines. I thought I had all my dragons organized, and I found like 2 more boxes of dragons.
I mean, I loved the Dragon magazine the earlier years until they stopped doing the third.
Everything up until 3rd edition was great.
No, I mean third party. When they stopped doing the third party, I love the stuff they had for Paranoia, Star Frontiers, Traveler. The stuff that was outside of even their own game systems. You remember this, like the Elephant Graveyard. They had games. The claymation with stuff. They were just good magazines to read and had fun. And my mother,
John needs to go to sleep.
Oh yeah. Well, see, John's just like, there are space games in there. I'm not listening. But the other part is that sometimes I did enjoy reading some of the stories in there because they were only like 3 or 4 pages long. I did enjoy reading and I know why John gets mad, but that's the way all magazines were back then. You read a certain point and then it would split it somewhere else. Like, really? Is this how you're doing me? I have to flip like 40 pages to get to the other, to finish the, I'm not saying that everything's the best necessarily for layout, but
issue 16 was particularly egregious for that.
It gets worse, John. But the letters to the editor were fun. I enjoyed reading the letters to the editor. And, and Eli's mentioned this, is some of the complaints that you hear from 5th edition players, those were the same complaints they had in 1st edition in the letters to the editor.
Yeah, it's there's tale as old as time. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's all the nerd rage I read. The utter pedantry. Oh, it's exactly what we see.
I watched a video today on this when 4th edition was coming out today, and he was showing some of the advertising that from in-house from WotC about 4th edition. What's hilarious is so much of that would never make it in the community today. Like, there's literally like cartoons that are having, a guy try to hit on the Maiden of Pain from Planescape, and it's just like all this weird stuff, like jokes about dragons shitting on people and stuff like that. And I'm like, but the funny, during the thing, he was showing some of the emails and stuff that was coming through to WotC at the same time, and it's the same. This is just a cash grab, blah blah blah. This is like same nerd rage.
Yeah.
And I guarantee when 2nd edition came out, we didn't have the internet, but I'm sure there was plenty of talk about this is just a cash grab, trying to get me to buy the same books all over again, and look at all these splat books. And
well, I everyone talks about that. It's a cash grab. I'm never gonna. Well, That's
then don't
fine.
buy
Don't
it.
get it. Yeah,
I actually kind of
there's no
kick
one
myself
forcing you.
for buying into that over these years. After so
I
many
know.
years of accumulating so many books and coming to the realization that I used to play and have just as much fun with the old systems, I kind of wish I would have just like stuck with the old
Stuck with
stuff
them,
and
yeah,
just
yeah.
kept buying all the third party crap that was coming out for them and kept coming out.
Well, I think
Right.
that's one of the great things that we have now.
I think John's
Which-
trying to go.
Oh, well, I just went with Drive Through RPG now. We have that access, which we didn't have, 30 years ago when they did switch systems. But they did not
Yeah.
have the support. Anyway, go ahead, John. I know that you want to leave, or your wife's going to kill you.
Yeah. Actually, I've got to get my car to a garage in the morning. That car I've recently bought, engine lights. Come on, God. Right, but right. I, as you all know, I'm the old geek. If you haven't already subbed to my channel, why not? Elfbait's got his channel. So Elfbait, you were talking about cryptids at the way. I couldn't watch that because it was YouTube was playing up.
It was a cryptic stream.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
No, it kind of got a little weird. It was a short stream because I don't think StreamYard's or either that or StreamYard's adjusted with the time because I'm damn sure I scheduled it for 10 a.m., which is my slot normally, but it wasn't set to start till 11.
Right.
That could have been me, but anyways, it you got to miss. You can go back and watch it if you haven't already. Me and my buddy
I've watched
Jim.
bits of it. I've watched bits of it.
Yeah, my buddy Jim and I, we wax a bit about our own scary thing that happened to us as teenagers. But
Hey, John. If it's check engine light, just make sure that your gas cap is on and the thing is closed, because sometimes they'll come on if it's not.
Could be something as simple as a vacuum seal.
Yeah. Just like
it's. I have a feeling it might be something to do with the glow plugs. It's a diesel.
Oh, okay.
But I'll find out tomorrow. All right. Cheers, fellas. I'm going to say thank you to Bear for joining us for most of the stream. Omanal was on earlier. Slan tried, but his internet played up. Saxius hasn't got a channel, but Bear has. Slan has now. Omanal, of course, doesn't have his own channel. He's just a regular fixture on everybody else's. But thanks to all these fellas for popping in and helping the conversation go along, and of course everybody in chat. Cheers all. I'm the old geek, and I'm going to bed. Good night.
Good night.